The cell stank of damp straw and distant rot, yet Eddard Stark no longer noticed. In the weeks since his confession, forced beneath Joffrey's petulant glare, most sensations had dulled into the same gray fog that shrouded his waking dreams. What remained sharp was the memory of Arya's screaming face in the throng and Sansa's trembling body on the steps of the Great September Honor had spared neither daughter. It had spared no one who bore his name. Alok rasped. Torch glow licked the walls as Varys swept inside, slippered feet whispering over the stone. He bowed with an elegance that mocked the filth around them. "Lord Stark," he purred. "Or perhaps I should say Lord Snowdrift, for you are buried deep indeed." Eddard straightened, the old iron chains creaking at his wrists. "Come to list my choices again? Joffrey's mercy, or the headsman's mercy?" Varys shook his bald, scented head. "I come to offer the only mercy worth the name. Survival." He produced a tiny brass key. A turn, a passage, a silent flight by river under cover of moonless skies. South to Dorne for a year, perhaps Bravos after. "Exile," Ned said. "I will not leave my girls." "Leave them? Never. Free them, yes." Varys's voice dropped. "Even a spider's web has angles you have not yet touched, Lord Stark." The small council splinters. Stannis gathers ships. Renly polishes banners in Highgarden. In the swirl of a fortnight, kings will sprout like mushrooms. No eyes will turn northward. Disappear now, strike later, and you might yet carve a safer road for your daughters. In the silence, Eddard heard a rat scuttle through straw, the steady patter of water from unseen cracks, sounds he had accepted as the heartbeat of this hollow place. Another beat joined them, the sudden, savage hammering of his own. Survival. Strike later. He remembered Benjen's frostbright laugh, Lyanna's blood on the blue winter roses, the small bones of dead Stark children lining crypts beneath Winterfell. They had all trusted in codes too brittle for the trials of men. Ned lowered his eyes. "Give me the key." Night cloaked the Red Keep. In a forgotten sally port above Blackwater Rush, a rope ladder snaked to the water where a skiff waited, its single oarsman hidden beneath a fisherman's cloak. Varys guided Ned along narrow cliffs that smelled of salt and sewage. At the boat, the eunuch pressed into his palm a signet ring older than Aegon's conquest, dire wolf rampant in silver. "Proof of life for those you trust," Varys whispered. "When your moment comes, let it gleam in every hall." Ned gripped the ring, feeling its ridges bite. He set foot in the skiff. No songs marked his departure, no banners snapped. Only the hush of wings passed overhead, a raven blacker than the night. 3 days later, a corpse wearing Eddard Stark's torn doublet swung from the Red Keep's highest rampart. Birds tugged at its matted beard while crowds jeered the dead traitor. Cersei Lannister watched from a silk-draped balcony, wine red as garnets pooling in her cup. When she turned away, a thin smile traced her lips, certain the North's honor had died with him. She never saw Varys shuffle past with hands tucked into his sleeves, whispers already coiling toward new plots. Months bled across the kingdoms while rumors of Ned Stark's death rooted deep. In the Red Waste, a Khalasar murmured that the king in the north had risen in ghostly form. In White Harbor, dockside poets rhymed hushed prayers for Stark vengeance between mugs of ale. But only 2 men knew truth, the spider who spun it and the wolf who walked it. Eddard limped along the misty banks of the Neck where the reeds of House Reed once welcomed him a lifetime ago. Behind him lay a trail of discarded names. Tom of Gulltown, Miles the fisherman's mate, No-Face Ned who sold river eels by moonlight. He moved unseen, but his thoughts sharpened like a freshly ground blade. By day he studied the Raven's tidings stolen from passing camps. Robb had called the northern banners, crushed Ser Stafford's levies at Oxcross, and driven Tywin west of the Trident. A boy victorious. Pride warmed him, but cold reason cooled it quicker. A boy victorious once might die undone the next dawn if the game's unseen pieces moved against him. Eddard's steps quickened. He would not allow Robb to fight half-blind, bound by his father's rigid sense of fair play. The game needed colder methods. He reached Greywater Watch, a fortress that drifted on shifting islands. Howland Reed met him in silence, embracing the gaunt form no raven had prepared him to see. Over low fires they spoke of old oaths, of Lioness' tomb, of promises stolen at the Tower of Joy. Howland's eyes burned when Ned said, "The truth of Jon Snow's birth may soon be the sword that severs the realm." "How?" Reed asked. "By cutting first." A fortnight later, 3 riders crossed the King's Road under new forged sigils. Twin towers split by silver reeds. They carried sealed letters in Ned's hand, stamped with the direwolf ring. One rode for Riverrun, where Catelyn Stark wept by candlelight, unable to decide if Robb's war honored her husband or shamed his memory. Another for White Harbor, summoning House Manderly's hidden fleet to silent readiness. The last for Braavos, to a man wearing half a smile and a Sellsword swagger. Ned had once despised the Braavosi's games. Now he would master them. The letters read only, "The wolf hunts under new moons. Blood seals our silent pact. When the 3rd harvest moon wanes, loose the swords beneath the green waters." Ruthless words, yet necessary. Raven talk would spread cryptic dread through Lannister spies, but to those who knew the cipher, drawn from old records in Winterfell's crypt vaults, it spoke plain. Strike during first frost. Sever supply lines on 3 fronts. Promise no quarter. At Moat Cailin, the boy lord of Barrowton waited in the rain, flanked by grim men. When a hooded figure strode from the fog, wolves' heads gleamed on his pauldrons, forged of blackened steel. The boy opened his mouth to pledge fealty, but the figure only raised a hand. Slowly he threw back his hood. Gray streaked his beard, but his eyes were 2 embers. "Lord Eddard," the boy whispered. "Enough titles." Ned's voice was gravel. "Call me Warden of Vengeance." He surveyed ruined towers crumbling like rotted teeth, then turned to the riders gathered. Umbers, Karstarks, Glovers, Reeds. Each kneeled. Yet Ned heard question in the hush. Was honor still the North's shield, or had he returned forged into something else? Ned answered by drawing Ice's twin. The great sword had splintered beneath the headsman's axe and been reforged in secret at White Harbor's hidden smithy. Its Valyrian ripples shimmered rain-wet. "In King's Landing they melted my father's steel," he said, lifting the blade so gray light shivered along its length. "Tonight we temper that injustice on all who'd beat us into chains. We fight not for banners but for breath, for sons unborn who will never bow to southern scorn." He pointed Ice toward the south. "Break their knees." Great John Umber, whose battle rage held a brand new discipline under Ned's gaze. Even Roose Bolton, sly in pale silence, found himself leashed by written oaths inscribed with threats of flaying returned upon his own house if he strayed. "Fear," Bolton murmured one night, finger tapping the parchment. "You wield it now like a Lannister." Ned's tone was stone. "Then pray the lion never teaches the wolf more lessons." When the 3rd harvest moon waned over crackling frost, the North unfurled its new face. Deep in the wolfswood, torchlight revealed the summoning of silent sisters. Not the gentle maidens who tended the dead, but masked killers. Women whom Catelyn Stark had once trusted to ferry fallen sons home. Ned bent the knee to their leader, drawing his dagger in the ancient sign of kinblood oath. They vanished into the snow, fanning south like white specters. At White Harbor, Lord Wyman Manderly's fleet sailed under banners of grain trade. Yet in every hull lay hidden war machines. Scorpions wrapped in tar-soaked cloth, casks of wildfire purchased through Braavosi cutouts. When the gulls lifted at dawn, no dockmasters marked their passing. Smaller plots threaded beneath those great designs. Gold cloaks loyal to Janos Slint discovered their families spirited north overnight, replaced in their beds by stones shaped like severed tongues. In the dungeons of Harrenhal, a jailer woke to find his ring of keys gone and his throat slashed in the pattern of a direwolf's grin. Near Crackclaw Point, 3 Lannister grain barges burned green at dusk, their flames mirrored in swamp water like dragon eyes. A single raven winged from Greywater Watch to Riverrun, carrying 5 words scrawled in Ned's hand. Release the young wolf west. Robb Stark broke camp 2 nights later, his cavalry plunging across the Red Fork under cover of storms conjured by damp river mists. Scouts found Lannister watchposts deserted. Soldiers vanished into woods, throats slit, banners shredded. Robb's bannermen whispered that Father's ghost paved the path. But in the Godswood of Riverrun, Catelyn Stark knelt before a heart tree whose face wept red sap. When Ned emerged from shadow, her scream choked into stunned silence. He pressed a finger to her lips as tears streaked hers. "Honor," she managed. "They said. Honor kept me alive only long enough to learn its limits," he replied. He held her, but his embrace was iron, not comfort. "Our children need a father who teaches survival, not blind faith." Catelyn shuddered, sensing the steel beneath the familiar voice. She asked no more questions. From that night, ravens raced along every sky road. The North remembers was no longer whispered as a lament but proclaimed as verdict. The phrase changed on 1,000 tongues. The North reclaims. The North revenges. The North reaps. At dawn of the winter's first biting gale, Ned Stark crossed the Twins with 100 silent sisters in his wake. Lord Walder, fat atop his fretted chairs, prepared leers and insults. He received instead a single parchment, a list of children set to die should a single northern hair be harmed. Walder's eyes bulged. He kissed Ned's hand and opened his gates. When the army marched through, Bolton paused beside Ned. "You shock him into obedience." "Obedience born of fear lasts longest," Ned answered. "And love." Bolton's lips formed a thin smile. "Love is a song men forget when the wolves howl." In King's Landing, Cersei's spies reported phantom strikes. Warehouses robbed, gilded youths snatched from brothels at midnight only to return bruised, raving of a wolf's face carved into the boards opposite their beds. Tywin Lannister, still nursing Oxcross's wound, ordered triple patrols along the Blackwater. He never guessed that doom crept not by river now but through the crimson mouths of his own coin counters. For the Iron Throne, fear became the new commerce, and the mint was the North. Winterfell waited. Its walls, scarred by fire and raised banners, rose like skeletal fingers to a pale sky. Bran Stark sat alone at a tower window, eyes white with distance, ravens circling him like thoughts. When hoofs thundered in the yard and the iron gates groaned open, he smiled without surprise. Hodder carried him to the courtyard as Ned dismounted Icefang, the great gray stallion bred for war. Father and son regarded each other across the cold flagstones, one bound to a cripple's chair, the other to a newfound savagery. Bran's voice, small but sure. "The trees told me you were coming. And what else did they whisper, my son? That the North is changing skins. The direwolf is shedding mercy in favor of wrath. Yet, wrath can stray." Ned knelt before the boy, placing a calloused hand on his cheek. "Then guide me when my eyes fail." Bran's gaze flicked toward the heart tree beyond the gatehouse, where red leaves trembled though no wind stirred. "They already do." That night, under cold starlight, Ned Stark stood alone in Winterfell's crypts. Lyanna's statue watched him, stone petals clutched to her breast. Jon Snow's name lingered on his tongue, half prayer, half weapon. Soon, perhaps, he would unleash the truth of the boy's birth to shatter Baratheon and Targaryen claims alike. But not yet. Timing was now the sharpest sword. He drew ice and laid it across Lyanna's lap. "Sister," he murmured, "forgive me. I wield ruin in your name so your ghost may one day rest." He closed his eyes. In that darkness, ghosts gathered. Ricard burning, Brandon strangling, children lost to southern games. They bade him carve a future where northern sons would never again dance on southern strings. Ned opened his eyes, and the crypt's gloom seemed lighter, as if those ghosts approved. He lifted ice, its edge catching a shard of starlight that gleamed not silver but a wet, hungry red. Beyond the gift, wildling scouts spied columns of black smoke twisting into the sky above the last hearth. They whispered that men of the Night's Watch came southward in secret parleys with Starks, forging pacts older than the Wall itself. Some feared a new king beyond the Wall walking in a Stark's clothes. Others prayed it true, for winter devoured free folk as mercilessly as it did Kneelers. On the 15th day after Ned's return, banners unfurled from Winterfell's ramparts. The dire wolf emblazoned not on pale field but blood-red, jaws dripping crimson paint. Word flew on wind and raven alike. Winterfell called for every bannerman able to bear arms. The North answered not with songs, but with iron. From Bear Island, longships cut through blinding sleet, sails reefed low. From the rills, riders galloped across snowdrifts, hooves muffled in white silence. From Skagos came creatures half-legend, gnashing their filed teeth in grim smiles. All for a single purpose that pulsed in the North's collective heart: the blood price. As campfires multiplied beneath Winterfell's walls, Ned rode along the lines, studying men's faces. Many too young to shave, others scarred by old rebellions. He spoke rarely, but his presence welded them into razors. Each recognized the shift in him. The Lord who once quoted the old code, "He who passes the sentence should swing the sword," now taught them a harsher axiom: swing first, question later. At dawn on the final muster, Ned climbed the battlements, ice resting across his shoulders. Wind snarled through wolf-head crenellations, tearing at his cloak. Below, thousands lifted eyes. "When the lion burned my father and brother," Ned began, voice carrying like iron on an anvil. The North bent to the promise of southern justice, yet justice came never. He faced south, where the horizon lay veiled in storm. "So now we march to teach them the true measure of the word. No quarter to those who chain our children. No mercy for those who name us dogs. We are wolves. We remember." A roar thundered from throats hardened by frost. The sound rolled over Winterfell like avalanche thunder. Unrelenting, unbroken. Ned felt it quake in his bones. He lifted ice skyward. In that moment, no doubts remained. Honor lay buried in dust beside the corpses of gentler Starks. What rose in its stead was something leaner, colder, and infinitely more enduring. The march south would begin at first light, and beyond that dawn, tales yet unwritten waited, sieges scalded in wildfire, assassins haunting golden halls, and a direwolf's shadow stretching across the Iron Throne itself. But before the blood crest broke, before the songs were silenced by the crack of northern steel, Ned Stark stood atop his ancient walls, breathing the last free air of peace, knowing he would never again bear the name of honorable fool. He no longer cared for such fragile crowns. He cared only that the North remembered, and that every soul who doubted would soon choke on that remembrance. The first spear of dawn struck Winterfell's ramparts as Eddard Stark rode out beneath the gaping jaws of the main gate, a silent procession of black-armored riders following in his wake. Thick breath plumed from every mouth. Iron-shod hooves rang against frost-slick stone. No horns announced the host, no banners lifted on the wind. A departure in secrecy, because victory would be sown in silence long before it bloomed in public blood. Behind them, in the courtyard littered with Will ruts and trampled straw, Bran watched from Hodder's broad shoulders while Maester Luwin fretted beside him. Neither spoke. They both felt the shivering wrongness that clung to the icy air. A sense that winter's bite had sunk not only into earth and stone but into the soul of the Lord who now carried the North's future southward. 10 leagues beyond the walls, Ned called the column to halt where an ancient heart tree bent its red limbs over the King's Road. He dismounted, pressed gloved fingers into the face carved deep in the bark, and whispered words that were neither prayer nor promise but a covenant older than houses or crowns. The others kept a respectful distance. They could not know that in that instant the old gods answered, rustling leaves though no wind stirred, letting Ned feel cold purpose flood from roots into bone. He rose, wiped crimson sap off leather, and gave the signal onward. For days they moved beneath dim skies, weaving through birch and ironwood groves where ravens flashed black between branches like prophetic shadows. Scouts fanned ahead, guided by silent sister hand signs, mapping every hamlet, every supply shed, every patrol route of the enemy pickets south of the Neck. At twilight Ned convened councils in low tents where maps were inked with new routes, and the dull candle flame revealed more than battle lines. It lit the hardened cast of his eyes. Once, those eyes had pleaded for less slaughter. Outside the Tower of the Hand, outside Baylor's September. Now they measured war the way a mason measures stone. What to strike, what to carve, where to wedge the chisel so the whole thing falls. On the seventh night, just north of the twins, messengers returned with tidings from Robb. The young wolf had driven Ser Adam Marbrand's outriders into the Tumblestone and captured a score of knights, yet lingered too long over the ransom terms. Tywin had recovered faster than expected, pulling veterans from Casterly Rock to stiffen the shattered center. Robb asked for counsel or permission to press deeper into the Westerlands and test the lion in his lair. Reading by firelight, Ned's jaw set. The boy still thought like a knight, eager for glory in measured thrusts. The war he envisioned was the war his father once honored. The war Ned now fought demanded different mathematics. He summoned Meege Mormont first. The Bear Island lady arrived clad in mail that looked hammered out of winter itself, frost tracing every link. Ned dictated a letter brief as a sword stroke. Withdraw the main host behind the Red Fork. Burn every bridge west of Riverrun. Leave Lannister scouts no track to follow but scorched earth. Then, quieter so only Meege heard. If the boy tries to linger, drag him north by his ear. I will not see my son snap. Ed in Tywin's jaws. She grinned a feral grin, clapped a mailed fist to heart, and stalked into the darkness. Next came Roose Bolton, pale eyes like chips of Dead Man's Lake. He listened, fingers steepled, as Ned outlined a daring raid. 300 Dreadfort men, half of them mounted crossbowmen, would glide through the night marshes along the Green Fork, circle Maidenpool unseen, and raise Lannister supply carts as they rolled toward Harrenhal. Bolton's thin lips twitched, a whisper of admiration. A necklace of flayed purses will delight my men, he said. Ned's voice cut him short. No flaying, Roose. We strip them of steel and grain, not skin. Wolves leave claw marks, not carpets. Still, he noted how Bolton's smile never quite faded. Ruthlessness wore many faces, and he must keep each on a separate leash. Dawnless gray settled over the next march. At the banks of the Green Fork they found ferries already prepared, hulls daubed pillow black to drink any stray moonlight. Ned rode the prow of the lead barge as it nosed through mist. Every creak of rope sounded like a confession to the river gods. He felt ice strapped to his back, its weight newly familiar, an anchor dragging him deeper into this unforgiving tide. Across the water, reeds parted and Howland Reed himself stepped onto the shingle, web shoes slung over one shoulder. There were no greetings. He handed Ned a scroll, ink sketches of a castle keep with sigils scrawled along the margins. Squinting lions, twisted crossbows, flared suns crowned with gilded thorns. Intelligence Reed's crannogmen had lifted from drunken sellswords near salt pans. Ned scanned, noting garrison counts, gatehouse routines, the obscure note South Sally barred but hinges rotten. He memorized every mark and burned the scroll in a brazier that gave off smoke thin as a hair. We harvest their ignorance first, he said to Reed. Then their blood. Reed nodded. He had seen the wolf devour much stranger prey in bog and mist. That very night, the first claws tore at Lannister grain. Bolton's men, faces smeared in ash and grease, slipped among wagon trains huddled by the fires of complacent merchants. They cut throats with cloth-muffled blades, tipped lamp oil barrels into wagons brimming with wheat, and set sparks dancing in wild saffron arcs. Flames whooshed skyward. Horses panicked, snapping tethers. When Lannister outriders turned on the commotion, they found black-fletched bolts hissing from hedgerows, guided by pale eyes that saw in starlight. By dawn, charred carcasses littered the road in a soot-black mosaic stretching 3 leagues. The supply chain to Harrenhal lay severed like an artery. Tywin's fury traveled faster than any raven, but his replies traveled on hooves that now starved for forage. Rumor said he paced Harrenhal's echoing halls like a caged lion, ordering fresh levies from the Crownlands, even reaching east to uncertain allies in the Stormlands with promises of chests heavy with rock gold. Yet each chest needed wagons, wagons needed grain, grain had turned to ash. The lion's roar began to sound suspiciously hollow. In King's Landing, Cersei awoke restless under a canopy of Myrish lace. The dawn told her nothing. Ravens told her less. But the whispers, those she heard clearly. They spoke of wolves without mercy, of caravans choking the king's road with corpses, of lords turning coats for fear their daughters might be taken like the late Tisha of Volantis, whose head arrived at Casterly Rock riding in a jar of brine scented with juniper. Circe summoned Varus, demanded answers. The spider only bowed, hands fluttering. "Information decays like fruit, your grace," he said. "Someone has plucked my ripest vines." She struck him across his smooth cheek, drawing no blood but plenty of amusement behind his unreadable eyes. He left with a promise to reacquire missing vines. She poured wine stronger than good sense and brooded on how to snare a ghost who no longer kept his head where a sword could reach. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, a different storm gathered. Word from Pentos of a red comet seen again above the stepstones, its tail a burning sword. Merchant captains whispered that the Khaleesi who walked fire hatched 3 dragons alive. Ned's ears pricked when news reached him at Oldstone's ruin. Carried by a sell sail from Lys down to Saltpans, then up the Trident in exchange for a purse of silver stags. Dragons returned meant prophecy revived, but prophecy could wait. He placed that feather of worry inside a steel box in his mind, locked it tight. The North had no wings. It had teeth. They reached the ruins of Seaguard under a moonless sky. Lord Jason Mallister greeted them with subdued celebration, mindful of spies in any tavern. Ned convened a war council in the stone tower whose windows once gazed upon Ironborn raiders. There, maps redrew themselves into a 3-pronged assault. Bolton along the causeway into southern Crackclaw Point, Meege ferrying Robb's vanguard by covert barges upriver to outflank the Golden Tooth, and Ned himself leading a needle-thin column straight at Harrenhal. "But the castle is a ruin," protested Ser Desmond Grell, no stranger to Valyrian fire's legacy. "Its walls taller than any ladder, gates thick as oaks. It ate the dragon fire and still stands." Ned's voice sliced away doubt. "We are not besieging Harrenhal. We are making it bleed from the inside." He revealed Howland's sketches, the hidden sallyport once thought collapsed, the rotted hinge no engineer bothered to mend. A detachment of silent sisters already crawled through the marsh canals feeding the castle drains, wearing sealskin and leech's oil to mask any scent. At the appointed hour of the next new moon, they would slither up through the oubliette beneath the kitchens, strangle every cook, poison the morning porridge with blister beet extract, and open the postern gate at sunrise. Ned's column would ride in as a plague behind walls that thought themselves safe. Grell's weathered face paled, but he bent the knee. Fear had become the mortar binding these uneasy bricks into fortress. As the new moon neared, secrecy closed like a fist. No campfires revealed the host's position. They marched by starlight, rations raw. Horses stumbled in darkness, riders learned to ride blind. Some muttered that the old gods themselves guided the steps, that every twig snapped at precisely the moment grappling hooks found their purchase. Ned rode at the head, eyes alight with an energy unnatural for a man who slept maybe 2 hours each night. He scribbled letters at rest stops, coded reports to be flown by Reed's swamp ravens that roost in the hollows of his saddle. In earlier years, he might have worried over every life he now flung at impossible odds. Now he weighed casualties like a smith weighs ingots, necessary loss to forge a greater blade. The night of the moon's dark face came wrapped in clouds thick as wool. The column halted in Cattail Marsh outside Harrenhal's north wall, far from the main gate. There among stagnant pools, Ned dismounted, removed cloak and helm, and smeared river mud across cheeks and brow. He ordered the same of every man. They became more wraith than soldier, faces drowned in blackness. A drizzle began, thin, persistent, perfect to muffle the rattle of chain and buckle. Hours stretched. An owl hooted once, twice, the agreed signal. From the curtain wall, a torch winked out, then another, leaving a rectangular patch of darkness where a postern gate yawned. Ned's gauntlet closed around Ice's hilt. He breathed the river stink, tasted rust flecks of anticipation. Hand rose, dropped. A silent flood of wolves surged forward. Years later, bards would embellish the taking of Harrenhal with flames leaping higher than towers, with Ned Stark riding a phantom horse of snow. The truth was colder. Men moving like shadows, a door groaning on hinges older than kingdoms, the crunch of boot on gravel echoing down halls where fires were banked low. They killed as they found, each quick as snowfall. A guard's throat parted by Mormont steel, a stable boy muffled under umber hands, for Lannister knights who died still half asleep, dreaming of Casterly feasts. By dawn, the smoky hearths filled with a reek not of breakfast gruel but burned flesh. Cooks sprawled in the scullery, tongues blistered and eyes glazed. Those few soldiers who discovered the poison in time fled to gatehouses, only to meet thrumming quarrels from crossbow loops now commanded by Reed's marsh archers. Ned strode into the hall where Tywin Lannister had once held court on a seat carved from blackened weirwood. The chair remained, but Lannister was gone. Camped south on the God's Eye with half his host, planning siege of Riverrun. Ned climbed the dais, unsheathed ice, and split the chair in two with a single descending blow that rang like a bell of war. Shards skittered across flagstones. "Stone should never serve a lion," he said, voice echoing. In its place, he set a crude stool hammered together by camp carpenters, direwolf sigil roughly branded onto the slab. No throne, only a reminder that this castle was but a tool, soon to be discarded. He did not linger. Orders flew like ravens. Vaults stripped of grain to be loaded north, forges melted down into horseshoes and arrowheads. Ravens' cages emptied save for 5 birds, each bearing falsified letters forged by Maester Luwin's neat hand. These letters claimed Ned's host suffered sickness, morale collapse, begged for truce. They were sent east, where Tywin's spies would intercept what they thought careless error. Let the lion believe the wolf limped. That same afternoon, Ned allowed Bolton to select 50 captives from the dungeon for his lessons. There were whispers he took flensing knives below the dungeons where the black cells dripped. But when Bolton emerged, no screams followed. Only silence, eerie and absolute. Whatever message he carved it deep enough that no tongue dared repeat it. Ned marked his disquiet, but said nothing. Every leash has slack if the quarry remains in sight. Robb rode into Harrenhal 2 days later, his red wolf banner drooping in damp wind. He dismounted, glanced about with raw dismay. Ruins charred anew, courtyards piled with confiscated arms, captives marched in lines shackled at wrist and ankle. "Father," he said, voice soft, "we've won great ground, but at what price to the small folk? There are children starving in the cellars." Ned kept his gaze on the horizon where smoke still rose from burned wagon trains. "Our mercy does not feed them if we fall. Starving now spares them the lion's yoke later." Robb recoiled. "Is that the language you once condemned in Robert?" Ned's stare cut deeper than any blade. "Robert squandered pity on traitors in silk. I hoard pity for our line alone." The gulf between father and son widened by a breath they both felt but could not swallow. That night, as rain lashed the gargoyle spires, Robb found his father on the battlements. Wind whipped wet cloak against hardened steel shoulders. "I must understand," the boy said. "You said the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Yet you pass sentences now you do not swing, poison porridge, raids in darkness. Is that justice?" Ned answered without turning. "That is war. Justice will come once we no longer need war." Lightning painted his profile stark and unforgiving. "Do you want your sisters back?" Robb nodded. "Then we slaughter until bargaining costs the lion more than their heads. Only then does justice have meaning." Rain drowned whatever protest remained. Far to the south, in King's Landing's Red Keep, Joffrey stamped his feet, demanding retaliation. He wanted Ned's daughters brought forth to beg forgiveness publicly before their father's rotting corpse. Cersei reminded him Ned was already dead. Joffrey screeched that the traitor's ghost must therefore be paraded. In the council chamber, Varys cleared his throat. "Perhaps we focus on the living ghosts, the bannermen wavering in the crownlands." Joffrey flung a golden goblet that struck Ser Mandon Moore in the jaw, denting steel. Blood spattered the Kingsguard's white cloak. Moore did not flinch. Cersei called an end to council, but the damage was plain. The Boy King's madness bloomed louder with every rumor of northern victories. Stannis Baratheon, brooding at Dragonstone, received ravens heavy with Cersei's pleas for Westerland support, each sealed by wax still soft from Tywin's signet. He laughed a laugh devoid of humor and flung the letters into Blackwater Bay. Then he summoned Davos. "The lion's tail is afire. The wolf gnaws his throat," he said, eyes like splinters. "We strike the belly while it writhes." Davos counseled caution. Stannis's knuckles whitened on the map table. "Caution ended the day my nephew lost his head and gained a crown not of right but of incest." He ordered sails readied. War would soon swallow yet another claimant. None of this slowed Ned Stark's designs. For every major maneuver in the open, he orchestrated 3 wounds in shadow. Cobblers in Lannisport bribed to slip gravel into new cavalry boots. Salt merchants in King's Landing paid to spread talk of plague on the Rose Road, delaying food convoys. Maesters in Stony September secretly given northern coin to misdirect ravens. Each small sabotage seemed trivial, but together they tangled the Lannister logistics so thoroughly that Tywin's host began devouring itself. Men stripping bark from trees for stew, knights selling heirloom rings to buy stale bread from unscrupulous peddlers. Amid that hunger, Ned unleashed the most audacious blow. Ransom letters to every lesser son of Westerland's houses now captive in Harrenhal cells. The price was not gold, it was betrayal. Any knight whose family rose against Tywin would see their captive freed and given a parcel of fertile Riverland afterward. The letters were signed with the direwolf sigil and sealed by a token of authenticity: a single golden lion tooth extracted from some former Lannister champion's jaw. Within a fortnight, lesser houses like Jast and Sarsfield debated open rebellion, checked only by fear of Tywin's looming wrath. Yet Tywin grappled with his own failing health. Stress carved deeper canyons in his once implacable visage. Maester Tothmer's reports spoke of nights when the Lord of Casterly Rock coughed blood, his temper fraying as fast as his supply lines. He needed decisive battle. Ned denied him battle. Instead, Ned dissolved, melting host into woods and marsh, letting Tywin chase phantoms until exhaustion snarled him like quicksand. Robb chafed, but Meej and Reed shielded the boy from reckless charges, citing Ned's orders. Terror unseen was deadlier than swords drawn, but swords would come. Ned knew terror must crescendo in steel lest it dull. He gathered captains beneath Harrenhal's weeping tower and unrolled a new plan. An ambush at Stony September. Lannister outriders scouted that ruined town for shelter. Scouts reported numbers manageable. Ned would bait Tywin to send rescue, then slam shut the trap from 3 directions. Reed's bogmen lurking in river mists, Mormont's shield maidens hidden among abandoned granaries, Bolton's crossbows ringing hills beyond. He would stand at the spear point himself, making sure the rumor reached Tywin that Eddard Stark's personal guard escorted a wagon train of stolen Lannister relics ripe for reclaiming. Pride would ride before caution. Preparations turned Harrenhal into a forge of war. Armorers hammered steel until sparks filled every archway. The blacksmith's rhythms became heartbeat of the castle. At times Ned walked those corridors and felt he trod the inside of some giant beast, its organs smelting, its breath reeking of coal. In the smithy he found Gendry, the bull-strong apprentice Cersei had once tried to kill. The boy pounded a breastplate until rivets sang. Ned studied his broad shoulders, the awkward kindness in his shy glance. Robert's face before wine and war ruined it. He set a hand on the anvil. "Forge me something new," he said, and described a helm wrought in the shape of a snarling direwolf, its jaw hinged to Rhae's visor. "It will ride into battle first, so every foe knows which beast hunts them." Gendry's grin split wide. He worked 3 days without sleep, quenching metal in oil that hissed like broken oaths. On the eve of departure, Catelyn arrived under guard. News of Ned's survival had spread through safe channels, yet to see him whole, alive, yet sharper, frightened her more than widowhood. She beheld the new helm, blackened steel teeth, and shivered. "Promise me you will not become what we despise," she said. Ned's reply was grave. "I promise only to end this so our children need not decide what to despise." He kissed her brow. She felt how cold his lips were, like marble pulled from crypt. The column set forth before dawn. Ned rode at its front, helm glinting dimly, ice strapped across his back. Behind him marched an army trimmed lean of any who questioned the new creed. They made for Stony September, leaving Harrenhal garrisoned by a skeleton crew of river lords under oath to burn the castle should a single lion banner crest the horizon. The north no longer conquered, it scorched to deny. Across the miles, Tywin scouts spotted motion, reported Stark banners moving southeast. Tywin's gauntlet fist slammed the map table, scattering carved wooden lions. At last a bite he could anchor onto. He ordered Ser Gregor Clegane to ride hard for Stony September with 2,000 heavy horse to pin the wolves, promising to follow with the main force at dawn. The mountain accepted with grin wide enough to display filed teeth. Night cloaked their march. Tywin retired to tent, but sleep eluded. He paced, calculating how many suns he could lose and still call it victory. Ned reached Stony September 1st, but only just. The town crouched in ruin since Robert's rebellion. Charred beams, sagging thatches, wells choked with debris. He directed Bolton east to flanking ridges, Reed into the reeds along tributaries, Mormont into barn ruins west. The Silent Sisters fanned through empty streets, marking kill zones with chalk symbols invisible unless one knew the code. By sunrise, an eerie stillness ruled. Crows perched on shattered spires, waiting for feast of the living. Dust columns announced Clegane's vanguard. Wolves melted into alleys. Ned stood alone atop a fallen bell tower, dire wolf helm glimmering. As the mountain drew nearer, he saw the beast's helm, that black nightmare visage, turn upward. Recognition flickered, not of man but of mortal challenge. Clegane barked an order. Lancers spread to encircle. Ned raised his arm. A raven burst skyward, black signal.
Boltson.
From every rooftop, every shattered window, quarrels lanced downward. Lancers toppled, horses shrieked. Before panic could convert to charge, Reed's bogmen surged from streambeds behind, slinging oil jars wrapped in pitch. Flames flared violet where wildfire soaked linen. Mormont's women crashed from the barns, axes whirling. The mountain roared, hefted greatsword, cleaving through two attackers as though they were straw men. He spurred toward the tower. Arrows glanced off his heavy plate. Ned descended crumbling stairs 3 at a time, ice-drawn. He stepped into the open yard strewn with burning hay and twisting bodies. Clegane thundered forward, blade dripping brains. They met like colliding boulders. Ice ringing against Valyrian-forged Dark Sister stolen from some Essosi collection. Sparks cascaded. Impact jarred Ned's shoulders, but he rolled the power into a sidestep, letting the mountain's mass overcommit. He hacked at the exposed reins, severed them. The warhorse reared, unseating its master amidst shrieks. Clegane rose, towering, swung again.
Ned ducked, blade skrapig.
Indented chestplate, carving shallow groove, but enough wildfire jar saturated cloth under the plate. Sparks from their clash ignited it. Green tongues licked outward. Clegane bellowed rage melted into agony, beating at burning armor. Ned backed away as the giant staggered thrashing. Silent Sister's arrows struck joints, pinning him. When the fire reached his beard, he collapsed, a mountain crumbling under its own molten core. A hush fell. Then war horns low and far answered, the main Lannister host cresting the northern ridge. Time to unlock the next snare. Ned gave signal. Bolton's men raised captured lion banners, waving surrender feints. Lannister ranks paused, uncertain, as flayed men cannot be trusted but lions cannot ignore their own. Delay bought minutes. Manderly's hidden trebuchets, hauled from White Harbor piece by piece, revealed themselves atop southern hills. They fired casks of burning pitch across the trapped valley, severing exit. Panic tore Lannister lines. Tywin, watching from field center, realized the trap too late. His vanguard burnt, his retreat blocked, his scouts silenced. He ordered retreat but found the path now ringed by slaughter. Reed's swamp pits disguised under Reed's swallowed horses whole. Amid chaos, Ned whipped helm free, revealing gray wolf eyes to every direction. He did not cry victory. He pointed ice at Tywin's distant banner like a needle threading destiny. Wolves howled, human throats echoing. The battle rolled forward, a tide unstoppable. Hours later, smoke coiled above stony September like a funeral cloak. Lannister corpses lay heaped, piked for counting. Tywin had escaped, smuggled out by a last desperate guard, but with barely 200 riders and no supplies, forced to flee south toward King's Landing's uncertain refuge. The mountain was dead, body cooling in a half-collapsed well, armor fused to flesh. Ned walked the carnage, silent. Robb joined him, armor splattered crimson. Father and son met, eyes heavy with exhaustion and wonder. For the first time, Robb bowed. "Teach me," he said simply. Ned clasped his shoulder. "I am teaching you." His gaze swept field where wolves picked among lion carcasses. "Remember what mercy costs." That night they burned the dead, friend and foe alike, in a pyre that turned clouds orange. From the embers Ned plucked a half-melted golden lion helm and cast it into a wagon bound north. Trophies for Winterfell's godswood, reminders of the day the north bared its teeth so wide the realm trembled. Yet far away, other tremors gathered. In Dragonstone, red priests dreamed of a king forged by shadow and flame. In Karth, whispers of dragons stretched across incense-thick palaces. In the frozen wastes beyond the wall, watchers huddled at their fires, feeling the earth pulse as something older than kingdoms stirred. And in King's Landing, Cersei clutched a raven message scribbled in crimson ink. "The mountain is fallen." The lion's head lies heavy, leaning toward the wolf's maw. Bend the knee or bleed the crown dry. Her hand shook. She turned to see little Tommen asleep, innocent breath feathering silk pillow. Somewhere beyond stone walls, the people rioted for bread. She remembered Ned Stark kneeling on Baelor steps. The memory once brought smug victory. Now it carried only dread, because ghosts could not kill. And yet here the ghost of Ned Stark moved armies like pieces on a Syvas board, each square soaked red. She summoned Qyburn, whose arts scuttled along margins of Maester's vows. "Build me a monster greater than any mountain," she commanded. He bowed, eyes glinting like scalpels, and slipped away whispering of blue dyes and dead men's marrow. Through all this, Ned slept little. When at last he did, in a ruin sept outside stony September, dreams came. The Tower of Joy bathed in dawn. Lyanna's voice pleading again, "Promise me, Ned." Only now another voice overlaid hers, cold and stern. It was his own, muttering, "I promise vengeance until snow turns ashes." He woke drenched in sweat that smelled of smoke and iron. Dawn pinked the broken rose-glass window, shards catching light like 1,000 tiny swords. He rose, buckled ice to his back, and stepped outside to feel the chill bite. Somewhere south, a boy lay hostage in a city girded by betrayal. Sansa's songs had likely turned to silence. Arya's knife-bright eyes searched shadows for home. A father's duty had evolved. Now it roared. He called for parchment, quill, and the swiftest raven. The letter he penned bore no code, no hidden cipher, only stark truth. "Queen Regent Cersei Lannister, you hold my daughters. I hold your father's wrath and your kingdom's breath. Exchange must be swift, or North and Riverlands will march to your very gates with winter howling at our back. Choose daylight over darkness." Signed, Eddard Stark, Warden of Vengeance. The raven launched into steel blue sky. Ned watched it vanish, a black fleck swallowed by mist. The war's next chapter would bleed through the quills of negotiators or the blades of armies. Either way, he felt the north coiling behind him, ready to strike again. Mercy might follow. Later, when snow melted from graves and names carved on stone had time to be read without trembling. Until then, ruthlessness was the cloak he wore, the helm he donned, the sword he swung. And it fit him well, as though he had been born for winter after all. Steel rang where torches hissed in the gutters of Harrenhal's great armory, a constant clangor echoing beneath ribs of blackened stone. Eddard Stark paced its length at dawn, boots crunching stray filings, inhaling the scent of hot iron and horse sweat. Every anvil stroke here hammered purpose into the North's uprising. Yet purpose alone would not topple a queen who wielded wildfire and lies as deftly as any sword. He paused at a rack of freshly quenched spears and ran a thumb along one leaf blade edge. Perfect. It would drink southern blood soon. Bolton entered, cloaked in flayed man's sigil muted under soot. "The pyres are spent," he announced. "We counted near 4,000 dead lions at Stony September. Tywin fled with fewer than 200, all riding half-starved mounts. He'll crawl to the Red Keep inside a fortnight, if he lasts." Ned nodded once. "Good. Let him crawl. Wounded prey lures predators." He gestured toward the western gate. "We ride within the hour. The Blackwater Road lies unguarded now, but speed will close the gap before the lion licks his wounds." Bolton's pale eyes narrowed. "Straight to King's Landing with half your host? Even scoured, the capital's walls remain thick, its cells words many. Walls taller than ambition fall once the city's belly turns against them," Ned said. "King's Landing riots already. We shall feed the fire." Outside, gray banners cracked in cold wind. Meage Mormont drilled shield maidens in shield wall advances, her voice a bear's roar across the yard. Howland Reed drew marsh warriors into silent formation beneath dripping battlements, each carrying blow darts smeared with seepleeson sap, paralytic poison known in the neck. Great John Umber mocked girls and poisoned both, then laughed as he hefted a double-bladed axe broad as a barn door. Different teeth for the same maw, Ned thought, mounting Icefang. They set forth as pale sun broke through ragged clouds. The host moved in 3 columns. Bolton's van on the causeway, Reed's ghost slipping streamside, Mormont and Umber shielding flanks. Ned rode center with a cadre of veterans drawn from every northern house, a fist within the larger hand, ready to punch through whenever the moment came. Ravens spiraled overhead like scouts of the old gods. On the 3rd day's march, a lone outrider raced from the south, cloak torn by arrows long since broken off. He slid from the saddle before Ned's horse, knees buckling. "Lord Stark," he rasped. "The gold cloaks have seized every grain store inside King's Landing. Small folk starve. Bread costs 2 silver stags the loaf. Riots burn Flea Bottom nightly. They chant that the North is coming to feed them." The rider coughed blood, smiling frantic approval. Ned ordered Reed to see the man tended. "Let word spread farther," he told the Craneglord after. "Hungry men follow whoever breaks their chains." The 5th night, encamped beneath the ruins of Dun Fort, Maester Luwin presented fresh raven scrolls. One bore Stannis Baratheon's seal, a crowned stag in flame. Ned unfolded it by lantern, reading aloud to Mormont and Bolton. "Lord Eddard Stark, justice rides with iron discipline. Your victory at Stony September wounds the usurper's ilk, yet the realm bleeds still. Accept my hand in lawful cause. Joffrey's bastardy proves treason to the crown. Join me at Storm's End. Combine your northern strength with my rightful claim. Bend no knee to queens born of incestuous deceit nor to Sellsword rabble. I am king by law, you avenger by duty. Let oaths forge iron." "Stannis of House Baratheon," Bolton sneered. "He offers commands garbed as invitations." Ned folded the parchment. "Stannis courts allies as a smith courts heat, close enough to shape, quick to withdraw. Yet he has ships. If we choke King's Landing by sea while storming by land, the Iron Throne cracks." Mormont banged a mailed fist against her chest. "Then sail from White Harbor? Our fleets might reach Blackwater in weeks." "Too long," Ned said. "We march, Stannis sails. Timing must kiss precisely. I will send Davos Seaworth a ciphered raven. Direwolf scratch he alone can read. If Stannis commits, we strike in concert. If he hesitates, we tighten the noose alone." He penned by firelight, using the cipher they devised at Greywater. Alternating lines of direwolf runes and stag sigils marking dates and coordinates upon Blackwater Bay's mouth. Night of the moon's 3rd quarter, green embers rising. Luwin sealed the scroll in wax black as midnight. Sleep found Ned fitful that night. Dreams tangled swordlight and snow, Sansa's face pale against crimson silk, Arya leaping across rooftops with needle bared, Jon standing at the wall raising a flaming sword not of steel but morning frost. Lyanna whispered, "The winter rose keeps its thorns." Ned. He woke before dawn, eyes gritty, resolve sharper. 7 leagues south they overtook a Lannister supply barge drawn by weary oxen. Bolton's riders encircled before a shout escaped. In the muck, Ned discovered barrels of Dornish red meant for Joffrey's wedding feast set for late winter, a union of crown and coin to rally wavering lords. He ordered each barrel cracked and poured into ditches where the earth drank greedily. Wine gone, hope thinned. As they approached Blackwater's northern marches, Reed's scouts brought stranger news. A host flying the Tyrell Rose moving east along the Rose Road. 20,000 strong under Mace Tyrell, with Renly's colors intermingled. Renly had survived his brother's disdain and now courted the Reach's might to press his own claim. Ned considered. 3 kings, 1 throne, he said. Perfect chaos. He dispatched a rider with a single instruction in cryptic verse. Goat's milk spoils if stirred too soon. Reed understood. The Crannogmen would mislead Renly's outriders, delay their arrival until wolf and stag snapped lion. By then, Tywin had slipped into King's Landing under cloak of darkness. Lion banners folded away to avoid riot. He reached the Red Keep to find Joffrey raging at empty plates while Cersei paced corridors ruby-eyed. Tywin demanded counsel, but Qyburn emerged with grim tidings. Necromantic experiments on Gregor Clegane's burned corpse required moons turning and rare essences. Manticore venom, shade of the evening distilled by warlocks long exiled. The headless mountain lay bolted to an oak table in a dank subcellar, chest rising unevenly beneath black bandages soaked in blue tincture. Tywin recoiled at the sacrilege yet allowed it. A weapon is a weapon. 3 nights before the wolf host reached the city's outskirts, Sansa Stark stood on the Tower of the Hands balcony, moonlight silvering her hair. She clutched a needle-thin knife stolen from a careless guard. In the nursery below, Tommen wept, and in the throne room above, Cersei screamed at Pycelle for failing to conjure grain from scripture. Sansa breathed frost air, mind reciting steps Arya once mocked. Strike low, twist, disappear. She slipped the dagger into her sleeve and returned inside. Ned's secret letter, smuggled in loaf crust by sympathetic kitchen boys, burned against her breast. Hold courage, little wolf. The pack runs to you. At dusk the next day, Ned's army reached the hills north of Blackwater, cloaked by leafless copses and gathering fog. The capital lay stretched before them like a diseased leviathan. Fires of riot flickering in slums, bells tolling sporadic alarm, haze of burnt grain wafting. Ned dismounted on a ridge where an ancient statue of Undul's fallen in moss provided shelter. He studied walls, counting guard towers. "Fewer lights than last I remember," he muttered. "She bleeds already." He issued orders. Bolton's men to weave through the northern gate disguised as refugee smallfolk, blades hidden in burlap. Reed's crawlers to slip downriver in skiffs, ascend drainage tunnels beneath the dragon pit. Mormont and Umber would hold reserves behind the ridge, ready to charge when gates burst. Ned himself would ride with a vanguard of 60 cavalry wearing gilded cloaks taken from slain gold cloaks, wolves among lions. After, he drew aside Gendry, now armored in a breastplate he'd forged for himself stamped with a crowned bull. The boy bowed awkwardly. Ned said, "You know these streets?" Gendry nodded. "Good. Led my son Robb through the mud gate when chaos swells. Find the September of Baelor, liberate our people held there as hostages. Bring them under shield to the river. Use this." He handed over a black horn wrought of dragonglass, bound in silver. 3 blasts at dawn. We will answer. Robb protested he should ride with father. Ned's gaze softened then steeled. A king must rescue sisters before he claims thrones. Robb understood. They clasped forearms in warrior's farewell. Night fell thick and starless. In secret cellars within the city, silent sisters unlocked crates stuffed with bread loaves and salted pork stolen from Joffrey's granaries. Food cast among starving crowds. Whispers spread. The north feeds us. Gold cloaks sent to seize the bounty vanished into alleys. Throats slit. Just before midnight, wildling lookouts Ned had recruited near Queen's Crown signaled. Sails on the horizon. Stannis' fleet, a forest of masts ghosting across moon-dappled waves. Timing, the gods be merciful, held. Inside the Red Keep, pyromancer Haleen presented Cersei 50 vials of wildfire for defense of the city. She ordered caches placed beneath each main gate. Varys, eavesdropping behind Aerys, later scurried along secret tunnels to scribble notes. Green death poised. Wolves must beware. A child spy carried the parchment through culvert to Reed's men waiting in the sewers. Hours remained, but knowledge saved lives. Stannis' ships reached the mouth of Blackwater before dawn. Davos guided them silent under black sails. Anchors slashed to drop, oars muffled. They floated like patient sharks awaiting feeding frenzy. The first spark ignited within Flea Bottom at the hour of the wolf. Bolton's infiltrators overturned market stalls, hurling torches into heaps of wormy flour. Flames leapt, illuminating rags and wide eyes. Gold cloaks raced in. Arrows from rooftops cut them down. Panic billowed. Across the city, riot flared spontaneous. Women clawing at granary doors, men battering tax houses. Roused from bed, Joffrey screamed for heads. Tywin urged him to remain within the keep, but the boy king donned gilded armor and marched onto the ramparts to hurl insults at unseen traitors. Ned watched from the ridge as smoke rose, gauging the correct breath between spark and inferno. When church bells rang in manic cacophony, he mounted. "Ride," he said. His disguised cavalry trotted to the north gate where a thin line of weary guardsmen barred refugees rushing to escape flames. Ned spurred forward, cloak-stained Lannister crimson. "Open, fools," he bellowed. "Lord Tywin sends relief wagons for the king." The gate captain squinted but recognized the lion standard on Ned's borrowed surcoat. Chains rattled. Portcullis inched up. Bolton's refugees surged, shoving past startled guards, blades flashing. By the time alarm clanged, the gatehouse was theirs. Bolton himself cut the winch rope. The gate crashed open for Mormont's shield maidens charging from the dark, Umber hollering like thunder behind. City within, chaos without order. Ned's horse pounded cobbles toward the Red Keep, wolves pouring after. They split at crossroads, detachments veering to the September, to the barracks, to granaries. Ned followed the Street of Sisters, where riot collided with war, gold cloaks routing or defecting. A beggar tried to seize his reins. Ned tossed him a loaf. The man gazed after in stunned gratitude before vanishing. At the September of Baelor, Robb and Gendry arrived as priests dragged hostage maidens within. Gendry burst through doors swinging a smith's hammer, skulls cracking. Robb cut ropes binding Sansa and a dozen Stormlands ladies seized for leverage. He found Sansa pale but unbroken, dagger still in sleeve. Outside, Arya dropped from a cornice, eyes fierce. She had hidden among acrobats performing for crowds, plotting escape. The sisters embraced 2 heartbeats. Then Robb herded them toward the river amid fighting. Wildfire caches beneath the Iron Gate detonated, sending a green fireball high. Walls shuddered, stones molten at edges. Scores of Umber men died, but the section collapsed inward, forming a ramp. Umber, aflame with grief and fury, led survivors up the rubble, roaring. Inside the keep, Tywin grasped Cersei's shoulders. "We hold the Red Keep or burn it around us." Cersei's eyes glittered wine-bright. Qyburn arrived, face streaked with soot, pronouncing the mountain reborn though incomplete. "He requires no head to kill," the former maester hissed. They followed him to dim halls reeking of death. There stood the giant. 8 feet of stitched muscle, helmet fused to torso, eyes sewn shut with rusty wire, yet chest thumped slow. When commanded, he lifted a warhammer larger than most men and crushed a granite block to powder. Cersei exhaled relief mingled with horror. Ned's vanguard breached the outer bailey, scattering servants. He dismounted before the Tower of the Hand, where once he dwelled as captive contestant to southern deceit. Lightning flickered in dawn clouds, revealing scorched stone from earlier dragonfire centuries ago. Symbolic, Bolton's archers took positions on parapets. Reed's men emerged from wells to slit bell ropes, silencing alarms. Ned crossed the drawbridge into the inner yard, ice in both hands, helm a snarling wolf. There at the base of Maegor's holdfast stood Joffrey, flanked by Kingsguard Meryn Trant, Boros Blunt, and Tywin, golden plate dented from flight. Torch smoke roiled as they faced the Wolf Lord. Joffrey raised crossbow. "Traitor!" Ned stepped closer. "Your traitor lies in your blood, boy. Your father's name is not Robert." Gasps rippled from armored men. Tywin's nostrils flared. He understood the weapon now bared. "Hold!" he commanded Joffrey. Cersei emerged atop marble stairs, crown askew, mountain thing looming behind draped in gold-hued armor, face hidden by slab metal. "Release my daughters," Ned called, "and you may yet keep your lives and lands, though never your throne." Cersei laughed, brittle as thin ice. "The wolf begs mercy while brandishing sword? A fool twice over." The mountain moved. Each footfall boomed. Kingsguard parted, uneasy. "Ned adjusted sta." And see, before blows fell, a horn's triple cry wailed from the river, Gendry's dragonglass note. Ned's heart clenched with hope. Children free, path secured. He raised ice and advanced. The mountain swung down. Ned leapt aside, blades singing across monster's vambrace. Sparks skittered. The giant backhanded, catching Ned's shoulder, hurling him into a pillar that cracked. Pain flared, ribs may be broken. He rolled, gasping, saw Trant lunging. Ice flashed upward, severing the knight's hand. Trant's scream choked as second cut opened helm like ripe fruit. Bolton's archers loosed. Quarrels peppered Mountain's torso, embedding deep but ignored. The monster stalked Ned again. Around them, Lannister and Northern men clashed, steel on steel. Near the gatehouse, Cersei tried retreat, but Mormont's shield maidens blocked stairs. Cersei drew a dagger and slashed. Meege caught her wrist, twisting until steel clanged away. "Queen of nothing," the Bear Lady growled, hauling her captive. Joffrey shrieked, attempted to flee along battlements. Arya darted from shadows, knife slitting his calf. He tumbled, losing crossbow. She kicked it over the wall, then vanished again as guards gave chase. Ned circled the mountain, panting. A memory flashed. Brandon strangling himself against Mad King's chains, Lyanna's flowers wilting. He would not fail again. He fainted left. Bolton's last resort arrow whistled from rooftop, tip glistening with pale paste of adder's bile. It struck the giant's exposed armpit, sinking to fletch. Poison designed for boars coursed quickly. The mountain staggered. Ned lunged, ice cleaving through mailed abdomen, parting blackened flesh. Steam burst. The creature groaned low, fell to knees. Tywin roared grief unknown, charging with longsword. Ned parried. They locked eyes, one man built by cunning, the other reforged by vengeance. Tywin thrust low. Ned twisted, pommel-smashing temple. Tywin reeled. Ned seized his gorget chain and pulled so close he smelled roasted grain from earlier fires. "The North remembers," he breathed, then drove dagger through the gap beneath chin into brain. Tywin jerked once, dead before knees hit flagstones. Silence rippled, a lion's fall echoing louder than bells. Kingsguard dropped blades, gold cloaks watching raised hands. Bolton's men cheered low, wildlings ululated. Cersei crumpled, sobbing dry. Ned sheathed ice, stepped atop fallen Tywin and spoke. "The wolf does not seek your subjugation but your liberation from rotten roots. Kneel and keep your homes. Stand and feed the crows." One by one, soldiers bent knees. Meryn Trant crawled away clutching stump. Joffrey limped from alley, bloodied. Seeing grandfather dead, mother captive, he collapsed, mewling. Dawn's first rays crested the sea, striking gilded domes. Stannis' banners appeared upon the horizon hill of Rhaenys' hill, Baratheon stag-crowned, flanked by fiery heart of Lawlor priests. His men had landed upriver amid confusion, now marched unopposed. Ned strode to meet him at the broken gate. Stannis approached on a warhorse, face gaunt, eyes ablaze. Behind him Davos rode, smirking at victory not yet claimed. Stannis dismounted before Ned. "I see you've softened the city for me. It is not yours to plunder," Ned said, "nor mine to keep. The realm needs peace, not another tyrant. I am the rightful king, perhaps, yet armies decide little if the people refuse chains." Ned gestured toward burning slums. "Help me feed them, then lay your claim before northern lords in fair council. If justice sides with you, we will kneel without war." Stannis's mouth thinned. A council of wolves? Fairness indeed. A council of the realm. North storm reach Vale Dorn. You want a crown of law, let law confirm it. Else, keep fighting till none remain to rule. Davos leaned, whispering. Stannis's jaw worked. He finally said, "I will grant counsel within Moon's turn. But the boy must yield the throne, and the queen stand trial." Ned glanced where Joffrey, bound, was led by Reed's men toward secure chambers. "They will answer." They clasped forearms, cold handshake. But enough. That evening, Ned reunited with his daughters within the quiet godswood planted behind the Maegor's holdfast. Sansa fell into his arms, tears soaking cloak. Arya hugged both, eyes fiercely bright. "I stabbed the king," she boasted. Ned laughed, choked with emotion. He saw innocence lingering yet feared it would fade. "You are both Starks," he said. "Our hearts hold winter but beat for spring." Robb entered, flanked by gray wind splattered with gore. Father and son embraced, division healed by shared bloodshed. They spoke of banners to call, harvest to store, walls to reinforce. Duties of rulers, not conquerors. Across the Blackwater, camps grew where Stannis' soldiers shared bread with northern spearwives. Inside the Red Keep, Qyburn skulked into depths, retrieving headless mountain carcass smoldering with rot. Work unfinished. Cersei sat in her cell, hair shorn by Mormont, awaiting trial by northern tribunal. Joffrey, stripped of titles, muttered vengeance through swollen lips, but no one listened. Within a week, grain stores reopened, loaves distributed under watch of Stark and Baratheon officers. Riot flames cooled to embers. Songs of the wolf's mercy multiplied, though the mercy they praised had marched on ruthless boots. Council assembled beneath the throne, now draped in black cloth. Lords paramount trickled, Edmure Tully freed from Riverrun, Brynden Blackfish escorting, Bronze Yohn Royce for Vale, Prince Doran's envoy bearing Sunspear. Tyrells lagged behind, uncertain after Lionfall. In chambers lit by tall windows, Ned laid forth the truth of Joffrey's lineage with Maester scrolls, witness oaths, and Pycelle's forced confession. Gasps turned to growls of outrage. Stannis' claim stood clear, yet Ned rose afterward. "Law crowns rightful kings," he said, "but law must serve people. Winter is upon us. Food, roads, and unity outrank crowns. I propose a great charter, power balanced between throne and realm, justice from Winterfell to Sunspear. Let the king swear to it before he wears gold." Murmur of astonishment. Lords whispered. Stannis considered. "Bend laws to whim," he said, "and chaos follows. But bind the king to oath bound by every high lord's blade. Perhaps it holds." He agreed. In return, Ned swore northern banners to defend realm against threats brewing beyond the wall. He spoke of ravens from Castle Black describing dead men walking in snow, blue eyes burning. Few believed, but unease grew. Night after council, Ned stood on the ramparts where he'd once been imprisoned. Wind tasted of sea salt and smoke. Howland Reed joined him, silent until he spoke. Vengeance achieved. What now? Ned watched lanterns bob along streets below, where small folk reclaimed shattered lives. "Now we forge peace sharper than war," he exhaled. "But I fear peace will demand sacrifices fiercer than any sword stroke." Reed smiled sadly. "The old gods keep forging you, my friend. Steel grows stronger in each fire." Distant thunder rolled. A storm far out at sea or wings of dragons beating the clouds. Ned could not tell. He turned northward, toward a horizon beyond walls and wars, where winter waited patiently. The north would remember, and under his hand it would endure. He rested gloved fingers on stone, sensing it still faintly warm from day's light. Duty hereafter would not be lighter, but he was no longer the man who'd stepped from a dungeon into Varys' skiff. That man believed honor alone could win survival. This man knew the sword of honor had two edges, mercy and ruthlessness. Both must strike in balance. Below, Arya trained with wooden swords beside Gendry, laughter mixing with sharp clacks. Sansa voiced songs again, though their notes carried tempered strength. Robb plotted harvest caravans with Maester Luwin. Bran and Rickon waited in Winterfell, safe for now. Family bound him. Realm required him. A horn sounded from the river, Stannis' men signaling delegation arrival. The next forging began. Ned turned from sea breeze, cloak swirling. He gripped Ice's pommel, cold but reassuring. Winter might cover all paths ahead, yet for the first time in many years, he felt prepared to walk through snow without losing himself to its chill. The North remembered, yes, but now the world would remember the North. Storm clouds the color of tempered steel brooded over King's Landing for 5 days after the fall. Ringing rain that sluiced ash from scorched stone and washed lion-red stains into the gutters. Beneath the dripping gargoyles of Maegor's Holdfast, carpenters hammered shattered gates back into place while grim-faced northern stewards tallied grain with a precision few had seen south of the neck. The city lay stunned, like a stag struck but not yet bled out, its pulse weak yet stubborn. Eddard Stark felt its tremor through every cobble as he walked the deserted gallery outside the throne room. Ice at his hip, boots whispering on rushes newly strewn to mask the scent of smoke and rot. Inside, the Iron Throne remained draped in black cloth. No ruler would sit its twisted blades until every High Lord in Westeros pledged to the Great Charter forged in the wake of Tywin's death. The realm's first assembly since Aegon's conquest was set for the first full moon of early winter, a fortnight away, and already the capital groaned under the weight of arriving retinues. Baratheon banners cracked beside stark direwolves above the Red Keep. Crimson roses of House Tyrell unfurled on the hills beyond the Gate of the Gods. The silver falcon of Arryn circled over the Vale's encampment near the Dragon Pit. Yet not all banners fluttered in honest wind. Spies crept between tents, knives wet with rumor. Sellswords haunted alehouses trading allegiance for coin. Servants whispered that Dragonfire had again found wings across the narrow sea. Ned counted each omen, measured each risk, and found his nights shortened to slivers of fitful doze. On the sixth sunrise, he convened his war council in the small council chambers, now stripped of lion motifs and lined instead with plain wooden chairs. Stannis Baratheon occupied one end of the long table, rigid as a pillar, kingdom's grievance etched into every wrinkle. Davos Seaworth sat to his right, fingers drumming thoughtfully, while Lord Mace Tyrell lounged opposite like a feast-fed tomcat, fingering a sprig of mint to perfume the stale air. Ser Brynden Tully, Bronze Yohn Royce, Prince Oberyn Martell, and Meege Mormont completed the ring houses North, River, Vale, Dorne, and Bear Island bound by wary purpose. Ned entered last, cloak sodden, wolf helm tucked beneath his arm. He placed it upon the table so its steel teeth gleamed in torchlight, a mute reminder of the price already paid for hesitation. "The Charter's draft lies before you," he began, voice gravel sifted through fatigue. "Each lord may propose amendment, but know this, the people's voice shall carry weight equal to the crown's. Grain quotas, levies, and justice circuits will answer to a council of regions elected from freeholders. We stand at the brink of famine and worse. If winter lasts long, no gold nor valor will suffice without unity." Mace Tyrell sniffed. "The reach feeds half the realm already. Seems each clause drains more bushels from my granaries. Your fields flourish by grace of rivers fed far north," Oberyn Martell drawled, dark eyes glittering. "Water passes through Dorne before ever quenching your vines. Perhaps we should charge a tariff." Tyrell bristled. Davos leaned forward. "Water and wheat aside, there's fresh devilry afloat. Ships out of Pentos report 3 dragons grown larger than warhorses. following a silver-haired queen south along Slaver's Bay. Her banners bear the three-headed dragon, black on red. Daenerys Targaryen seeks allies. A murmur rippled. Stannis' jaw flexed. A pretender with beasts of fire. She must be answered before she crosses. Burn one city with dragon flame and small folk will cry for her, Royce warned. A conqueror with ferocity and grievance. Too like Aegon to ignore. And as Aegon once broke kingdoms, the others stir to break us all, Meej Mormont rumbled. A raven from Castle Black. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont reports dead things walking beyond the wall, their numbers swelling. Wildlings flee south in packs. Tyrell scoffed.
Bogey tales.
Ned's fist struck oak. You mock the snows while summer still clings to your orchards. I have seen true winter. It is relentless, and it marches. Silence settled. Ned unrolled a crude map inked upon stretched deerskin. For bold lines radiated north, west, east, and sea. We cannot win every front with swords alone. We must weave diplomacy, supply, and, yes, ruthlessness where needed. His gaze swept them. First, the wall. I ride within 3 days with 2,000 seasoned Northmen and Rangers from the Vale. We ferry grain by sea to Eastwatch. Lord Redwine has offered casks if Tyrell signs. He waited. Mace exhaled and nodded. Ink scratched. Grain secured. Second, the Iron Islands, Ned continued. Balon Greyjoy plots rebellion while we bicker. His fleet's Harry Lannisport already. We cannot spare armies, but we can divide his strength. Yara Greyjoy has written. She opposes her father's war. We support her claim, split their krakens in half. Davos approved. Stannis grunted reluctant assent. Third, the dragons. We dispatch envoys. If Daenerys seeks throne, let her face the charter first. Offer harbor in Storm's End to negotiate an oath. Dragonfire to fight winter, not realm. Invite a dragon to roost? Madness, Tyrell muttered. Ned met his eyes. Better at table than above your harvest. Fourth line jabbed south. Lastly, Dornish water gardens. Prince Doran houses thousands fleeing war. Dorne becomes lifeline to bread if the reach falters. In return, Oberyn secures mountain passes against Stormlander raids. The Red Viper's smile showed sharp teeth. His spear twirled idly. Debate raged, pages argued, ink spilled. But by dusk a fragile lattice of packs emerged, scribbled signatures trembling like fledglings on parchment. They broke council weary, each lord carrying both burden and spark of hope. That night, Ned found solitary quiet atop the Tower of the Hand, its parapet slick with rain. Far below, lanterns danced through streets where soup lines wound like rivers, but children's laughter occasionally pierced the chill. Small seeds in hard earth. He allowed himself a brief smile. Footsteps approached. Brienne of Tarth, newly sworn to lead the city guard upon Sansa's recommendation. Her blue cloak snapped in gusts. Lord Stark, she said awkwardly. The dungeons stir. Cersei Lannister requests audience. Request denied. Ned turned back to Black Sea Glimmer. She'll stand trial when lords assemble. Brienne hesitated. Your daughter Sansa. She spends hours outside the Queen's cell. I worry. Ned's spine stiffened. Why? Cersei speaks honeyed words. Claims she alone shielded Sansa from Joffrey's cruelty. Begs forgiveness. The girl listens. Ice's pommel felt suddenly warm beneath Ned's palm. I'll speak with Sansa. He found her in the torch gallery, candles flickering between suits of armor seized from Tywin's treasury. She traced a mailed gauntlet with delicate fingers, eyes distant. At his footfall she startled, cheeks flushing. She was crying, Sansa whispered. Not the tears of a viper, father. Real. She says she did love her children. Love may reside even in a poisoned heart, Ned replied gently. But love does not erase crimes. She would have watched your sister's tongue cut if it spared her crown. Sansa's throat bobbed. Must she die? Ned's silence weighed long. Finally, justice is not revenge, daughter. Yet justice must satisfy the living lest vengeance grow. The lords will judge, as the charter decrees. His hand cupped her shoulder. No matter the verdict, remember your mercy. This realm will need a queen who feels, not only rules. Sansa's eyes widened. Queen, the charter demands a council president, elected by regions, yet crowned only in duty. They will look to a Stark of peace after a Stark of war. He kissed her brow. Rest. 3 dawns later, the northbound column gathered at the King's Gate. Snowflakes mingled with mist, first breath of winter reaching even this far south. Ned's army wore patched lion cloaks turned inside out, wolf gray now, and carried pack mules laden with bread. Robb rode beside his father, gray wind padding silent. Arya perched behind Gendry on a rangy chestnut, bow slung, face fierce. Sansa watched from the gatehouse, Bran and Rickon safe in Winterfell under Ser Roderick's guard. Stannis saw them off, offering flinty respect. "Return before council reconvenes," he said. "Your voice must shape the verdict." "I will," Ned promised. They cut a steady pace along the King's Road. By Maidenpool, frost clung to hedges. By Derry, the pools bore thin ice crusts. Refugees trudged south opposite flow. Small folk from Crackclaw Point whispering of Ironborn raids. From Saltpan's warning of dead men glimpsed in night mists. Ned distributed grain at each hamlet, left Reed's healers to tend fevered children. Word traveled ahead. The wolf brought bread. At Moat Cailin, banners swelled as Karstark's, Umbers, and Manderleys joined, eager to march with the returned lord. The moat's towers bore new iron warning bells forged from Lannister helms. Ned held council beneath their shadow, mapping garrisons along the King's Road north of the Neck. He placed Robb over 30 scouts to shadow Greyjoy movements, ordered Bolton, absent but sending reports, to remain garrisoned in Harrenhal until trial's outcome. Crossing the leafy water, Ned dreamed of crypts again. Lyanna and Benjen standing beside statues weeping blood. A whisper echoed, "Ice alone will not save them." He woke chilled. 2 days south of Winterfell, a raven from Castle Black found him. Jon Snow's bold script reported patrols vanished in the haunted forest, blue-eyed wights attacking hard at the fist of the first men. Only fire turned them. The letter ended, "We need dragonglass and men." The wall echoes with dead wings. Jon signed Lord Snow, official but haunted. Ned gathered his captains that night in a snow-laden birch grove. "We split forces," he announced. Half would escort grain to Eastwatch under Mormont, half ride with Ned to Castle Black. "I will face what my son faces," he said. None argued. They reached the wall as pale dawn bled across snow dunes. The colossal ice rose sheer, surface glazed blue. At Castle Black's gate, Jon met him in black furs, eyes shadowed by sleepless weeks. They embraced, father gripping bastard son, as if flesh born of hidden truth might anchor the world. Ned felt the weight of secrets, Lyanna's final plea, yet held silence still. Jon led him along the rampart. Fires guttered in iron cages, tended by shivering recruits. Beyond, the haunted forest lurked, limbs crystalline with rime. "We've sent rangers by 2s and 3s, Jon said. "Only ghosts return." In the war room, scrolls and crude maps lay scattered. Ned studied them while Maester Aemon dozed nearby, warm hood drawn. The plan emerged. Build signal towers of pitch casks every quarter-mile south of the wall. Stockpile dragonglass blades from Dragonstone for each patrol. Ride to Hardhome to evacuate wildlings, denying the dead more troops. "Man and free folk alike behind the wall's shadow," Jon murmured. "Or corpses serve the others." Ned clasped his shoulder. "We are all the realms of men now." Work began at once. Manderley carpenters felled pines. Reed's bogmen taught recruits to weave net snares for Unday.
Ad umber roar spurd drills.
In 3 days, the first beacon tower flamed. Smoke spiraled into gray sky, defiance carved in ash. Yet beyond, unnatural horn calls echoed. One night the aurora writhed blood-red. Silhouettes moved at tree line. Tall, pale, eyes blue as glacier heart. Arrows of dragonglass loosed. Some figures disintegrated to ice shards, Others withdrew silent. Jon confided in Ned, voice hushed. Their numbers crest tide-like. Fire slows, not stops. Ned dispatched ravens south, one to Stannis urging immediate relief ships to Eastwatch, another to King's Landing, beseeching lords to ratify fealty so armies might ride north. He sealed them with Direwolf Ring and the Black Watch's black wax. Winterfell welcomed the returning grain column days later, storerooms bursting for first time in seasons. Bran greeted his father on rampart chair, ravens circling. The weirwood spoke, he breathed. A storm of swords and snow, and a bolt of dragonfire melting ice. Ned knelt, thumb brushing Bran's cheek. Then we must forge alliances faster than clouds gather. South, the capital churned. With Ned gone, politics festered. Cersei's trial date neared. Sansa's gentle advocacy tempered public fury, but dagger eyes nested in every corner. Qyburn roamed the dungeons, seeking lost serums to rouse his Franken knights. Mace Tyrell pressed for his daughter Margaery to preside ceremonial feast, currying favor with small folk. Oberyn tasted every vintage offered, claiming to detect poison thrice. Stannis' queen, Celis, arrived bearing sparrow priests singing of burning sins in night's fires. The commons trembled, uncertain which god now held throne. In this ferment, a cloaked figure slipped through Stormland's camp to Davos's pavilion, delivering a scroll sealed by three-headed dragon wax. Davos read, brow furrowing. Daenerys offered alliance. Dragons to defend realm if rightful justice delivered her father's killers and throne entrusted to people wise enough to safeguard the innocent. She demanded audience with the coming council. Davos carried the missive to Stannis at dawn. The king paced, jaw tight. She stands between me and the crown. Davos sighed. Or beside you, protecting crown from winter's shade. Stannis penned a curt acceptance. Meet at Dragonstone under safe conduct once council concluded. Dispatch ravens. But he prepared fleet nonetheless. On the wall, Ned oversaw final beacon tower when cry rang from east. White shadows moving at the gorge. Horns blared. Garrison rallied. Ned, Jon, and a rangy ranger named Corran Halfhand galloped along icy switchback to the ridge. Through drifting snow they saw a mass of figures, living wildlings, gaunt but breathing, pursued by shimmering whites. At their head, a giant in mammoth fur-wielding tree trunk club. Jon recognized Tormund Giantsbane below, bellowing for gate. Ned turned to Jon. Open, he said. Some men will revolt, Jon warned. Then they'll learn. They opened the gate. Wildlings staggered through, eyes wide with terror of stone and ice more than of crows. Behind, a wave of dead rushed. Fires sparked. Dragonglass arrows sang. Ned swung ice, cleaving undead torso to shards. Snow-stained blue flame flickers where dead blood hissed. The battle raged through dawn. When sunlight finally bled over curtain wall, the corpses lay brittle, but losses heavy. Tormund knelt before Ned and Jon. I saw it, he rasped. Night's king rides again, a crown of frost, leading dead giants. He builds army at the shivering sea. Ned looked northwards. Then the wall is no border but a beginning. He drafted message to council. Night's king lives. Dragons needed north before snows devour. Charter or crowns be damned if we fall. He sealed it, bolstered with blood signature sliced from his thumb. The council gathered under full moon of early winter, chill seeping through stone vault despite braziers. Lords arrived swathed in sable and silk, eyes wary. Cersei stood chained, golden hair ragged. Joffrey shivered in brown homespun. Tyrion Lannister limped free under truce, face scarred, to speak for remnants of his house. On dais limned by torchlight sat 7 chairs, one for each region, 8th empty for the people's elected voice. A tanner named Tomard Rivers chosen by mob acclaim. The Iron Throne, still veiled, loomed behind like judgment. Sansa, clothed in direwolf gray gown, addressed the hall first, her words steady yet gentle. Tales of starving children, of mothers' screams under wildfire, of a north that bled lion but fed foe. Her appeal for clemency where possible salted eyes. Ned, in Wolfhelm, followed, recounting dead rising, truce with wildlings, necessity of unity under charter. Bran's raven perched upon his shoulder, cawing. The trial commenced. Evidence of Cersei's treasons, incestuous heirs, attempt on Bran's life, wildfire caches killing hundreds, stacked like cordwood. Tyrion's defense pivoted on maternal instinct and Tywin's coercion. Voice Tomard spoke for small folk burnt by wildfire, demanding recompense over bloodshed. After deliberation, the council pronounced Cersei stripped of titles to join Silent Sisters, tending battlefield dead for life. Joffrey exiled to Old Town to serve as acolyte under Maester's chain, identity hidden. Tyrion allowed to rebuild Lannisport under Stark oversight, in memory of shelters he funded after wildfire. Some cried lenient, others just. Yet verdict stood, signed by all but Stannis. He scrawled barely legible concession. Next question, crown. Stannis staked lawful claim. Mace floated Marjorie's gentle rule. Oberyn teased Dornish succession. Ned rose. The realm does not require one king above all, but 7 guardians beneath charter, guided by people's voice. Gasped. He unfolded revised clause. A rotating high steward elected each harvest by council majority. First term offered to Stannis for his fleet's salvation at Blackwater. Stannis's lips tightened. Beneath weight of gazes he nodded once. I will steward, not reign, until winter ends. Cheers and mutters mingled. Sansa named Queen's Hand to mediate charter between lords and commons, council tempered by compassion. She accepted with steady chin. Arya grinned, whispering she'd guard her sister with a dozen hidden blades. Davos hailed the decision. Mace preened at proximity to power. Oberyn toasted to a realm of many thorns. The charter, signed in ink and blood, became law as ravens spiraled into frosted night. Weeks later, Ned knelt within Winterfell's Godswood, snow drifting upon black cloak. He read Jon's latest raven. Wildlings sworn to the watch, joint forays scouting others' positions, rumor of an ice dragon far north. Ned prayed to ancient faces, asking strength. Catelyn approached, hands warm on his shoulders. They spoke of children, of Sansa's first edict releasing grain levy in Fleabottom, of Arya training street girls in Bowcraft, of Bran dreaming roots that shone with silver sap, of Rickon racing direwolf pups across frigid lawns. Catelyn's voice trembled. All our babes carry swords now or sooner. Ned rose, kissed her hair. Swords sometimes keep the peace sharper than parchments. A horn echoed beyond walls, riders from the south. Ned and Catelyn hurried to gate. Ser Davos arrived, beard rimed with frost, bearing a sealed urn from Dragonstone. He opened it before them. Inside, black-veined glass daggers and a single egg shimmering red gold. From the Queen across sea, Davos said. Proof of trust. Dragonglass forged by Valyrian fire, and an unhatched sibling of the dragons. She sails for Storm's End to treat with counsel. Hope and dread mingled in Ned's breast. A dragon egg at Winterfell, the first since Balerian's time. Bran rolled forward, eyes shining white for a heartbeat. The egg will hatch when the wall cracks, he murmured dreamlike. Fire meeting ice wrought by blood of kings and bastards alike.
Ned exhaled fog.
Then we shall be ready. Across the narrow sea, aboard the flagship Wind's Shadow, Daenerys Targaryen watched Drogon will against Crimson Dawn. On deck beside her stood Missandei and Ser Jorah, and a young maester from Volantis clutching scrolls regarding the North's pact. 3 dragons roared, breath steaming. Daenerys clasped a northern raven feather braided to her hair, gift from Ned's envoy. She whispered, I bring storm to a land already storm beset. Let my fire warm, not scorch. Sails billowed. Westeros, half-healed and half-bleeding, awaited the next chapter. Dragons, dead, and direwolves dancing upon snow and cinder. Far north beneath auroras, a pale king crowned in crystalline thorns raised hand toward swirling night. Behind him, ranks of silent dead stretched leagues, eyes burning sapphire. In his other hand, he held a shard of obsidian, dragonglass stolen from fallen ranger, melting slowly in icy grip. He studied the drip of black onto snow and smiled, a crack of glaciers. At his silent command, giants carved from permafrost bent their knees. The army marched south, footfalls muffled by falling snow. Above, clouds parted to reveal a comet's tail burning green, wildfire trapped in sky. The Night's King whispered a language older than leaves, and the winds of winter carried his promise toward walls both of ice and of men's fragile treaties. Rain hammered the battlements of Dragonstone, each droplet a pin striking the ancient citadel's scales of black obsidian. Eddard Stark had not set foot upon the island since Robert's rebellion, back when the castle's sea-washed walls had echoed with the storm-tossed screams of the last Targaryen prince. How strange, then, to return now by invitation of the dragon's daughter, and as ally rather than executioner. His cloak whipped against his greaves while he waited in a forecourt where molten rock had once cooled into grotesque serpents mid-slither. Around him, the North's honor guard 30 hand-picked spearmen clad in direwolf steel shifted in the biting salt wind. Farther downslope, Stannis Baratheon's banner crackled at half-mast beside Davos Seaworth's ship, a mute reminder that even a steward king must genuflect to stranger tides when winter howled. A deep boom resonated beyond the portcullis, iron chains groaning. The gates parted. Missandei of Noth emerged first, cheeks wet with drizzle yet posture regal. "The Queen of Dragonstone bids Lord Stark welcome," she announced, voice steady against the storm. Ned inclined his head and felt the uncanny weight of past and future pivot upon the gesture. He signaled his men to stay. Only Jon Snow walked beside him, Lord Commander, bastard, and perhaps more than he knew. They followed Missandei down a torchlit corridor, boots striking volcanic stone veined like ebon glass. The air shimmered faintly with trapped heat, the castle's heartbeat. They stepped onto a windswept terrace overlooking the bay. 3 dragons roost along the parapet. Drogon, vast as a warship's hull, scales black like midnight flame, golden cream Viserion, and green bronze regal, each eye reflecting torchfire as if hoarding worlds. Between their folded wings stood Daenerys Stormborn. Her silver-pale hair clung wet to leather pauldrons edged in red, and her violet gaze fixed upon Ned with a force that might shatter iron. She spoke first. "Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of Vengeance, hand to a realm not yet reborn, you come under flag of parity. What do you ask of fire?" Ned met that piercing stare. "To temper ice, the North faces an enemy dead to reason. Dragonfire may be our final hope." Dany's expression flickered. "Sorrow, memory, resolve. My family's fire-charred cities to cinders. I will not loose it upon innocence again. But against these others, yes. Fire and blood for the dead." Jon stepped forward, hood blown back, revealing dark curls matted with sleet. Drogon's head swung lower, nostrils flaring, hot breath curling white in cold. Jon raised a gloved palm, standing firm though heat scorched. Scales clicked. Drogon inhaled Jon's scent, then huffed, as if acknowledging kinship. Murmurs rippled among unsullied guards lining the wall. Daenerys' eyes widened. She spoke in Valyrian. "Zaldriz's Illicat, a dragon recognizes." Ned's heart pounded. If ever there were a sign to unveil truth, this was it. Yet secrets wielded poorly cut allies deeper than foes. Not here. Not yet. Instead, he produced the Crimson Vein dragon egg delivered to Winterfell weeks prior. "Your gift reached us. It will hatch when fate wills," he said, offering it back. Daenerys shook her head. "It belongs to the Snows now." She gestured at Jon. "Dragons choose. Let it hatch where ice meets fire." A distant horn moaned over the surf, 3 long blasts answered by 6 quick echoes. Davos' sailors scrambled across deck lanterns, and Stannis himself strode onto a lower quay, cloak snapping. Reports had arrived. Ravens from Eastwatch, wings singed and broken, bearing scraps of parchment spattered with frozen blood. The message was clear without words. The wall's eastern gate had fallen. The others had found a way across the shivering sea's edge, skirting the high curtain in skiffs of ice and bitter magic. Ned pressed palm to hilt. "We waste hours in speech. The dead move." Daenerys nodded once. I will fly at dawn. But dawn came copper-gray, and wind howled so fiercely sails tore from masts in Dragonstone's harbor. Maesters whispered the gods, old and new, warned of hasty flight. Even Drogon paced along the courtyard with restless growls, stymied by gales. Another day passed amid hammering squalls that lashed stone into sheen. In the council chamber carved like a dragon's skull, Stannis pored over maps, jaw-locked. Every hour we linger, the Night's King gathers thralls, he snarled. If wind grounds dragons, we sail ships. We do both, Ned answered. He outlined a twin-pronged march. Northmen embarked on Baratheon cogs hugging Gulf of Grief, making landfall at White Harbor where Manderly's fleet awaited. Daenerys and Jon would fly ahead when winds eased, torching undead supply lines. Woods, barns, any refuge. The Queen accepted, though unease shadowed her eyes each time Drogon's wings buffeted aimlessly against sky. That evening, Jon found Ned in a torchlit alcove shaping Valyrian steel arrowheads. Snow crept through arrow slits, settling upon Ned's wolf cloak. Jon spoke low. He knows my name, father. Drogon looked into me like no other beast. I remember your words in the crypts, promises of truth after war. War is here. Truth may guide victory.
Ned post, bladet glinting.
Truth is a fire of its own, Jon. It warms allies or burns them. Daenerys has lost much to false friends. If she learns you are her blood, Jon's breath steamed. Better by my word than by whispers in a throne room. Ned studied the dark beyond the arrow slit. Snowflakes caught torchlight like sparks. Benjen's ghost. Lynna's fevered plea. At Winterfell, Ned said slowly, when winter's heart reveals itself, I will stand beside you and speak it plain. Not before. Jon nodded, tension coiled under duty. Guards called. The squall had broken. Stars pricked ragged clouds. Wing beats thundered as Drogon vaulted skyward, regal and Viserion following. Flames lit the night, dragonfire mapping a path north. White Harbor swelled with refugees from every shire. Harbor piers sagged beneath wagons bearing children wrapped in burlap, goats trussed in corners, casks of brine-soaked herring. Lord Wyman Manderly, half his bulk lost to sleepless months, greeted Ned's vanguard at dawn, eyes sunken but voice booming. Bread and salt for half the south, snow and ash for the rest, yet will not fail the north. He gestured toward ranks of tall ships retrofitted with ballistae tipped by dragonglass bolts. Our mermen sail before the tide turns. That tide brought with it rumors. Skirmishes near the rills where sentries swore they saw giants with blue-lit eyes. An entire fishing village gone, hearths cold, doors ajar. Bolton's Raven arrived, Harrenhal now a fortress hospital, housing both wounded and plague-stricken Riverlanders. He requested permission to experiment with flame pits lined by obsidian dust, claiming preliminary tests reduced whites to black smoke. Ned granted resources but cautioned, no living prisoners for trials. Bolton's reply, the dead provide ample subjects. They sailed north under one sun that never warmed. Off Bear Island they found Mormont galleys adrift, hulls scorched, masts gnawed by frost. Meege herself hailed from a longboat, spattered in ichor, voice hoarse. They came from beneath the waves, hands of ice breaking through hulls. We smashed them with torches soaked in whale oil. Costly lessons. At Eastwatch, charred ramparts jutted like broken teeth. Smoke drifted from collapsed gatehouses. Snowdrifts smoked where embers lingered. Commander Cotter Pike limped out, bandaged, greeting Ned with bitter grin. Held them a night and half a day. Then ice spiders big as hounds scurried over seawall. We paid them in fire, lost 200. Jon landed on shattered courtyard moments later astride Regal. Drogon and Viserion spiraling overhead clearing remnants of whites near forest's edge. Daenerys dismounted with fluid grace, expression taut at devastation. Night rang with hammers as survivors reinforced barricades using salvaged ship timbers soaked in pitch. Ned convened a quick council in the mess hall still stinking of burnt flesh. Jon, Daenerys, Meege, Manderly, Cotter Pike, Tormund Giantsbane, and Bowen Marsh. A map of the far north lay spread across a trestle, drawn in charcoal by wildling scouts. Black cliffs, the Frostfangs, the shivering sea, Hardhome. Atop the map's blank spaces, Bran's raven had inked mysterious glyphs. Ravens dropping such marks became frequent skin-changer messages. Ned traced them with calloused fingertip. They hinted at a pass between glaciers unknown to watch maps, a spear thrust pointing southwards, the Night's King's route. "We take the fight to him at Hardhome," Jon said. "Rescue free folk still living, deny him recruits." Daenerys weighed his words. 3 dragons and 1,000 men against legions of dead. "Legions vulnerable to flame," Ned answered. "If we torch his ranks before he reaches the wall, we gain time for the realm to rally." Meej slammed fist to table. "Wail like snow, roar like bear. I say we rip his head crown and mount it on Winterfell's gate." Plans hardened. Ships ferry wildlings along coast while dragons clear approach. Northmen and unsullied land dawn after, fortify cliffs. Stark spearmen form shield wall funneling dead into narrows where dragonglass stakes line ground. Scouts would climb peaks to intercept white walkers that circumvent the beach. Preparations began at once. By dim lanterns, Ned oversaw distribution of obsidian blades, each stamped with wolf sigil. Daenerys visited sickbeds, speaking Valyrian prayers that calmed fevered boys. Dragons hunted thundering walrus herds to feed the starving. Snow blew sideways, coating camp in ghostly pall. On the eve of departure, Jon climbed to a tower top, staring at stars blurred by aurora curtains. Daenerys joined him. Below, regal coiled, nostrils steaming. Jon said, "When this is over, I'll tell you a story. It begins at the Tower of Joy." Dany cocked head. "A Tower of Joy rarely ends so." Jon gave half a smile. "No, but truth matters even if it wounds." They set sail under sky bruised violet. Frost-encrusted rigging groaned. Black waves slapped hulls yet parted beneath dragons' shrieking passes. 3 days north, whales surfaced amid ice floes, spouting vapor plumes that glittered in slanted sun. On 4th night, eerie green shimmer wavered over sea, ghost fires dancing across water. Sailors whispered omen of drowned gods. At dawn, Hardhome's cliffs rose, jagged spires gnawed by millennia of wind. Fog clung to wooden wreckage along shore, burned skiffs and broken longhouses, their thatch white with rime. No living voices echoed. Jon, Ned, and Daenerys landed first, armored in blackened Valyrian steel forged at White Harbor. Artisans blending iron and drake-glass dust for resilience. Unsullied phalanx formed silent wall while Northmen disembarked, torches lit. Snow squealed under boots. A keening wind carried faint cries. Maybe gulls, maybe souls. They advanced into ruin. Skeleton frames of halls leaned, doors gaping. In Central Square, a bone-white tree grew, leafless, trunk carved by wildling runes. At its roots lay fresh corpses dressed in furs, faces twisted yet warm, eyes closed, not blue.
Ned knelt, touching wrist, bloodless.
"Drained," he muttered. Tormund swore. "They take life before raising." Dragons circled overhead, uneasy. Jon scanned cliff rim. Figures appeared. Humanoid silhouettes of pallid armor etched in frost, spears pale as moon. One stepped forward, taller, crowned by branched antlers of ice. The Night's King. His eyes glowed azure inferno. He raised a crystalline scepter. The dead rose. Corpses at roots lurched upright, eyes igniting blue. Snow erupted as hundreds more clawed from drifts. Wildling, crow, even an armored Braavosi Sellsword whose bronze mask still fused to flesh.
Ned skjuted, shields.
Phalanx locked. Unsullied spears bristled. Northmen raised broad wolf shields lined by dragonglass shards hammered around edges. "Dracarys," Daenerys cried.
Dragon's dove.
Drogon unleashed torrent of flame, a river of orange searing undead ranks. Regal and Viserion fanned out, igniting flanks. Whites shriveled to ash. But where flame licked White Walkers themselves, fire guttered, air cracked cold, flame dying mid-gust. Battle joined like a storm of ice and embers. Whites slammed into shield walls, Dragonglass swords shattered them, but numbers replenished. Jon carved a path toward the Night's King, Longclaw's Valyrian edge sparking frost. Ned followed, ice-cleaving torsos, his every move precise. Unsullied formed wedge behind, Missandei directing. The Night's King extended palm. Sheets of ice burst from ground, hurling Jon backward. Ned leapt, parry failing as staff of ice met ice. Sound like shattering glaciers. Viserion swooped, blasting flame. Cold aura swallowed it. The Night's King hurled spear of frozen light. It struck Viserion's wing. The dragon shrieked, crashing onto shingle, wing torn, blood steaming. Daenerys screamed, spurring Drogon lower, but frost gust enveloped them. Drogon faltered. Amid chaos, Bran's raven burst from clouds, cawing frantically. Suddenly wolves howled. Snow, gray wind, ghost, shaggy dog, even Nymeria with her pack of river wolves, drawn north by Arya's call. They tore into undead ranks, ripping sinew from bone. Above, the aurora rippled blood-red. A thunderclap split sky. From it plummeted a meteor streaking crimson. It slammed the cliff crest behind the Night's King, exploding shards of molten rock. Shockwaves staggered dead and living. In the crater stood a fourth dragon, scaled obsidian streaked by ruby veins, wings smoking. The egg from Winterfell had hatched mid-sky, birthed in firefall. Upon its neck clung Bran Stark, eyes white, skin veined with weirwood scarlet. The dragon inhaled, exhaling a torrent not of flame but searing white light, starfire. It struck the Night's King full. Ice Crown hissed, melting. He roared a sound like glaciers calving, raising arms to summon blizzard. Bran spoke through Dragon's throat, a voice layered with wind, leaf rustle, child and ancient seer. Return to cold memory. Light intensified, engulfing the figure. Armor cracked, streams of water cascading. At last the Night's King shattered, a million frost shards spinning skyward like snow reversed. Across battlefield white stiffened, collapsed lifeless. Silence fell, broken only by surf.
Ned, panting, knelt beside Jon.
They looked upon Bran's dragon, named Sekazares by ancient tongue, the Dawnflame. Bran's gaze returned to his eyes. He slid from saddle, legs trembling. Arya darted to catch him, tears freezing on lashes. Victory's euphoria mingled with dread of cost. Hundreds fallen, Viserion mortally wounded. Daenerys stroked bleeding scales, whispering. Drogon keened mournful song. Jon laid hand on Dany's shoulder. Ned placed ice point down, head bowed for the dead. Brothers, wildlings, unsullied, beasts. Night pressed but no dead stirred. Still they worked, burning corpses carving pyres. Dragonglass caches buried to glow for centuries. Sekazares perched upon ridge, eyes glowing amber, sentinel. A fortnight later the survivors marched south, banners limp. At Winterfell's walls, bells rang. Catelyn greeted Ned with tears, Sansa smiling radiant as thrice-forged iron. Arya sparred ghost wolves under first crocus buds sprouting through snow. Spring whispered. In Godswood, beneath the heart tree, Ned stood with Jon, Daenerys, Bran. White ravens circled, citadel heralds of seasons change. Ned's voice trembled yet rang across quiet glade. He spoke of Lyanna's love, Rhaegar's honor, Jon's birth in blood and blue roses. Daenerys closed eyes, a tear silvering cheek. Jon knelt before her. She raised him. Blood of my blood, she said. They clasped hands, ice and fire entwined. Word spread on raven wings. The bastard of Winterfell was Aegon Targaryen, rightful heir and twice-proven savior. Some lords balked, others cheered. Sansa and Tomard Rivers calmed riots with bread and open courts. Stannis resigned stewardship, satisfied law held. The charter named Jon and Daenerys co-regents, king and queen elected by council, bound by oath to rotate power every 7 years. Dire wolf and dragon stitched upon new banners. Argent wolf entwined with red dragon on midnight field. Tyrells casked wine for a harvest festival. Ironborn pledged peace under Queen Yara. Dorne signed treaty for free trade of silk and citrus. Bolton returned north to reticent praise. Flayedman banners rolled away. But some nights Ned paced battlements. He recalled crystal shards swirling where the Night's King fell, some carried by wind beyond sight.
Evil rare li dis utterly.
Yet hope sprouted, vine over ruins. One dawn he watched Secazares and Drogon soaring above fields greening anew. Children laughed beside snowmelt streams. Maesters rebuilt ravaged septs as libraries for all creeds. Swords melted, plows forged. Catelyn joined him, slipping hand into his. "Do you still fear the wolf you became?" He looked across sprawl of tents melding into villages. "I fear complacency," he answered. "Honor untempered invited grief. Ruthlessness unchecked would birth tyranny. Balance, like a blade, must ever be honed." She brushed gray in his beard. "The realm stands because you learned both edges." He kissed her, tasting hope. Below, Jon and Daenerys addressed assembled lords in no grand throne room but Winterfell's courtyard under open sky. Jon spoke of watchtowers renewed along the wall, of free folk settlements south under Stark Ward. Dany promised granaries filled, roads paved, healing for war-torn hearts. Then she smiled at dragons overhead. Flames burst skyward in arcs of gold, green, and dawn white, painting new banners in the heavens. Children cheered, wolves howled, harps played. Ned lifted gaze to skyscript of fire. For the first time since his cell beneath the Red Keep, peace felt like more than fragile dream. Felt forged, hard, ringing true. He gripped ice. The steel reflected dawn and dragon flame alike. A blade that had tasted vengeance and mercy, forging the realm anew. The North remembered its ghosts. Yes, but now those ghosts could finally rest beneath quiet snow. And as ravens flew south carrying news of spring grass sprouting upon battlefields once slick with blood, men and women from Arbor to Shadow City told a new tale. How ice and fire met, neither extinguishing the other, but fusing into steel strong enough to weather winter, and cut a path toward sunlit summers yet unwritten. The wind that swept the courtyard smelled of damp straw and new-turned earth, not snow or ash. Spring touched Winterfell with tentative fingers. Tiny yellow winter asters opening in cracks between flagstones, a soft drip of meltwater from the slate roofs, ravens croaking less harshly than they had all winter. Eddard Stark paced the battlements alone, hearing the castle breathe as a living beast. Blacksmith hammers ringing, livestock bellowing in thawed pens, children chasing one another along muddy lanes, their laughter bright against gray stone. Each sound was balm after months of screams and sword clang, yet his thoughts remained restless. He had discovered that victory made as many demands as war, different coin, same toll. Below, in the yard where Bran had once climbed broken towers, 24 fresh recruits practiced with padded staves under the eye of Ser Brienne of Tarth. Boys and girls both, highborn and small folk alike, drilled in partnerships rather than ranks. A lesson that enemies no longer came neatly arrayed behind heraldry. They struck, parried, recovered, awkward but eager. One slip, one cracked knuckle, and Brienne calmly reset their posture, her booming instructions carrying up the wall. Ned saw Arya among them, hair bound back, moving with feline ease that spoke of early mornings and secret lessons. Ghost watched from a vantage near the kennels, white fur rippling, tail twitching each time a blow landed too close to Arya's ribs. A soft tread. Catelyn joined him, cloak of sober gray clasped at her throat with a brooch shaped like a trout and direwolf intertwined. They stood shoulder to shoulder a while, saying nothing. The breeze teased loose strands of auburn hair across her cheek. Ned brushed them tuck behind her ear. "Letters just arrived," she said, voice hushed, but not anxious. "From Sansa in King's Landing, and from the Citadel. The Maesters there have accepted 6 of our wildling girls as acolytes." A ghost of a smile. "Apparently they are quite taken with one's talent for anatomically precise sketches." "Good," Ned murmured. "Old orders loosen their collars sooner than I dared hope." "They adapt because you proved adaptation keeps one alive," Catelyn replied. "And because the children lead." She nodded toward the recruits. Brienne says Arya defers to the younger ones, wants them to think themselves brave. Ned exhaled a rueful breath. She is brave. Too much of me and not enough temper. Too much of you kept us alive. Catelyn's hand squeezed his gauntlet. But I did not climb to tell you flattery. Robb asks you to bless his journey south. He turned, brows knitting. To Riverrun? I thought he would wait for the first harvest moon. Plans changed. Ravens speak of Ironborn who refuse Queen Yara's oaths. One raiding fleet slipped far east, along the Arbor. Robb will deliver the Charter's ultimatum to Mace Tyrell and secure grain convoys for next winter all in one ride. Catelyn paused. He rides with Grey Wind and 200 riders, Jon's best rangers included. Ned opened his mouth to argue caution, then closed it. Robb had earned autonomy, hard-won in blood at Stony September and Hardhome. And if the North were to share power genuinely, he could not clutch every decision. I'll bless him, he said at last, and pray the seas keep calm while Ironborn rage. They descended to the yard. Robb waited beside a tall gray destrier, cloaked in crimson and gray half-cape, sigil of realm uniting direwolf and dragon. He clasped his father's forearm. Behind him Ghost sniffed noses with Grey Wind, both beasts' hackles rising at unsaid farewell. South is warm, father, Robb quipped. I shall return soft. The Tyrell kitchens will test your discipline, Ned agreed. He drew a small oilskin packet from his belt. 3 dragonglass arrowheads bound by a ribbon of maidenhair. Should krakens surface inland, send them home with this. Robb accepted with gravity. And if roses sprout thorns? Robb asked. Remember they cut flesh only when handled poorly. Offer calloused palms. They embraced. Robb mounted, horns blew, and the party clattered through the gatehouse beneath banners that fluttered bright against dawn. Catelyn watched until dust swallowed horsetails. Then she sighed. Another sun into uncertainty. Not uncertainty, Ned corrected softly. A necessity. He lingered with her hand in his. A hush settled between them, broken by a sudden wing beat. Bran's raven alighting on the Merlin, tilting its head. A strip of parchment bound to its leg. Ned untied the ribbon, brow furrowing as he scanned the tight scrawl. Jon's hand. He read aloud to Catelyn. Lord Commander Darrow is here at Castle Black. We have re-elected him after Maynard's passing. He bids gratitude for the grain. Ghost siblings roam free north of Eastwatch, thinning stragglers who wander south. No sign of remaining White Walkers, yet the Weirwood dreams speak of shadows beyond the Frostfang hearts. Sekazaries heals quickly. Maester Aemon's successor, Canaries, says the dragon's blood runs hot enough to cauterize its own wounds. We test joint patrols with free folk, early signs promising. The wall stands stronger repaired of fear than of ice. I will ride to Last Hearth in 3 days, then south to Winterfell for counsel. Ned's shoulders eased by fractions. Catelyn smiled. Your brood returns like ravens. We should station a steward at every hearth. Even ghosts need a rookery, he said. That evening the great hall filled for supper. Winter's End, once a grim fortress, now hummed with conversation from Dorne, Old Town, and even Karth. Apprentices from the Citadel shared benches with spearwives. Maesters collated lists of seeds suited for northern soil. On high dais Bran sat upright, eyes bright, hair brushed neat. When Ned took his place, Bran leaned close. The root network sings loud tonight. Something sprouts under the shadow.
Ned, Frau Ned.
The shadowlands of Ashai, rumors of sorcerers, smoky demons. He touched Bran's shoulder. Dream gently. We must plant hope at home first. After stew, musicians struck up jigs. Arya led a ring of shepherd children in spinning dance, whistling from a reed pipe. Sansa would have glowed to see it. Ned's eyes found Daenerys across the table. She wore deep blue velvet trimmed in silver, hair braided with wolfbone beads. She conversed with Prince Oberyn, laughter like warm wine. Drogon roost beyond the walls. She sensed him, Ned knew even while smiling. He rose and approached. Your Grace, he greeted softly. The people see dragon and queen together. It hearts them. Daenerys met his gaze. We must be not only saviors, Lord Stark, but symbols, yes? Yes, he admitted. Oberyn smirked. Symbols invite knives. He sipped dark red Arbor vintage. But such is life. 3 nights later, thunder shook the greening plains south of Winterfell. Dragons returning. Jon rode at Rhaegal's neck, Daenerys upon Drogon. Secazares carried Bran, though its ascent slow to spare the boy's healing legs. They descended into the courtyard amid cheers. Jon dismounted, stripped glove, pressed palm to packed earth. Ned crossed the yard. Welcome. Their hug was firm. Castle Black stands, Jon reported. But Hardhome smolders still. We burned every corpse. Fish spawn in blackened shallows, doubtless tainted. We'll send maesters, Ned said. Inside Godswood later, they stood before Heart Tree. Bran's voice soft. The dead stir no longer, but the dead of old dreams do. He clutched an obsidian figurine, eyes swirling milk white. Azor's ashes ride east. A city of shadow raises empty masks. Daenerys stiffened. Ass high. Bran nodded. They call her Daughter of the Dusk. She feeds on fear left behind. Jon frowned. Another enemy? Another thread. Bran returned to himself slowly. But consequences of fire disturb deep places. Dragons woke more than whites. Daenerys stepped closer. I must go. Not alone, Jon insisted. Ned watched the exchange, saw attention sharpen on them around campfires, whispers quickening. He cleared his throat. This realm still knits wounds. Without its king and queen it unravels. We do not both leave, Jon said. His eyes settled on Daenerys with a tenderness born of long night and shared flame. One travels. One stays. He faced Ned. I remain. I know these lands. I rule them. Let Daenerys ride east with Secazares and a small embassy. We cannot leave shadows unwatched. Daenerys touched Jon's cheek, then looked to Ned. Your daughter's diplomacy blooms. Sansa will keep me honest. She joins the embassy. Ned's breath caught. His eldest, far from war at last, thrust again into risk. Yet this was the world they forged. Each must carry flame. I trust her, he said slowly, and the dragon to ward them. Plans shaped quickly. Oberyn Martell volunteered, citing boredom and desire to taste exotic wines. Ser Barristan Selmy, long recovered, pledged his sword. Gendry offered forge skills. Arya begged to go. Ned refused. She scowled but acquiesced. Jon and Bran insisted on ravens tethered to dragons, to carry news every sunrise. Month turned. Seeds sprouted. Winterfell's orchard buzzed with honeybees drunk on first blossoms. The day before departure, Ned summoned Sansa to his solar. When she entered, her tunic was travel-soft, no silks. She understood practicality. He gestured to bench by hearth. I have gift. He produced a rolled parchment, unbound. Charter amendments penned in her own steady script, ratified by lords 3 moons prior. These words changed kingdoms more than swords, yet few know their author. Wear that anonymity as armor or discard it. Your choice. Sansa traced sentences. Words outlive armor. I'll own them when deeds show they keep children alive. Pride filled him. He handed a small dagger, Valyrian steel in a mother-of-pearl sheath. Carry when words fail. She rose on toes and kissed his brow, whispered, I know how to use both. The day of departure dawned clear. In Wintertown, thousands gathered to watch dragons climb sky again. Secazares crouched, scales shimmering between scarlet and midnight. Bran, in carved saddle, guided with quiet murmurs. Drogon remained near Queen's side, but would return to north after escorting them across Bight. Rhaegal perched on tower, wings mantling at dawn. Ned addressed the assembly. Here ride embers of new dawn. Let their flight remind every thief, tyrant, and ghost that realm stands vigilant. His voice carried. Sansa hugged Arya, whispered mischief undone. Catelyn wrapped arms around daughter, tears shining though she smiled. John clasped Dany's gloved hand. "Return soon. Or send for you," she answered. Their foreheads touched. Then Sekizares leapt, Bran's staff raised. Wind gust rolled. Petals from blossoming heart tree flew like blood-flecked snow. Drogon followed, Daenerys and Sansa astride its broad back, banner streaming. Wolf and dragon welded. Oberyn saluted with spear end. Gendry clung behind saddlebow, eyes wide. Dragons climbed over battlements, silhouettes against sun, wheeled southeast. Cheers rolled. Ned watched until specks vanished. He felt weight shift realm upon his shoulders and Jon's. He straightened. "Work begins," he said to Catelyn. "Work indeed." Famine pockets in the fingers, plague in Lannisport harbor, quarrelsome Vale knights defying Royce's new tithes. Ned dispatched ravens, riders, grains, maesters with herbs. He toured holdfasts, slept fewer hours, carried ledger more often than sword. Yet when sword called, he answered. He rode to retake a watchtower captured by rogue Ironborn reavers. The fight lasted dawn to dusk, sunlight lickering red off ice as he cleaved their captain's axe in two. The surviving Krakens kneeled and were marched to Deepwood Motte, where Queen Yara judged them, serve as dock builders or lose their right hands. Ned approved, harsh yet productive. Meanwhile, Raven scrolls arrived daily from Bran. Sketches of ghostly cities on slag-black rivers, of pale-faced priests wearing masks of starlight, of a child of the forest apparently living beneath glass candles in Ass-High. Sansa's postscript described Oberyn's duel with Shadowbinder illusions, Gendry's forging of sunglass blades infused with dragonfire, and Dany's negotiation with masked council called the Ashen Conclave. "They fear dragons," she wrote, "but fear complacency more. Talk of rifts beneath sea where dead things stir if light grows too bright." Ned reread that line often. One fog-shrouded midnight, a raven with silver feathers, sent by unknown hand, landed on Bran's tower. Its scroll bore glyphs older than runes. Maester Luwin traced them, brow creased. Translation: when moon weeps, fire shall swallow shadow, and the tide will drown the sun. Bran paled. He tended flames thrice that night, murmuring to roots. Jon found Ned at dawn, hair damp from training yard. Bran sees storms greater than armies. We must keep realm ready. Grain, levies, unity. He hesitated. And father, truth travels slower than rumor, but still travels. Leslin Manderly asked if I mean to claim throne alone now the queen flies east. What did you answer? That my claim is her claim. That rule is duty shared, not seat possessed. Ned placed hand on Jon's shoulder. When people ask again, stand firm. Doubt festers in silence. Jon looked beyond walls to sun-cresting fields. Let us plant more barley. Idle stomachs breed doubt sooner than tongues. Summer's first day approached. The fields of the gift shimmered green gold. Rebuilt watchtowers dotted horizon. Lanterns ready at dusk. Refugees returned north as roads grew safe. In Winterfell's library, scribe Tyala compiled the first annals of the Charter, recording how the war of ice and fire ended and how wolves and dragons governed. But peace is a dance with unseen partners. One afternoon, ravens arrived from Riverrun, crying alarm. Hoster Tully ill again. Edmure begged northern healers. Ned sent them, but next dawn new scroll declared father-in-law bedside visited by a strange apparition. A gaunt woman wrapped in faded gray, whispering of debt unpaid. His fever worsened. Old Nan's tales whispered in Ned's head. Lady Stoneheart hunting. He prepared to ride south when another raven, this bearing golden wax, arrived. Lannister envoy sought audience. Tyrion approached Winterfell under truce, escorted by Manderly knights. In Great Hall, his scarred face met Ned's wary gaze. "I come without rancor," Tyrion began. "Only need. Casterly Rock's mines flood deeper each year. We require engineering from Ironborn smiths you freed. In exchange, I offer 10,000 golden dragons to fund watchtower beacons along Eastern Green Fork." Ned studied the imp hope of his gutted house. The charter forbids indenture. The workers are free, paid thrice fair wage. They hunger for silver. The rock holds it. Catelyn, Standing near dais, whispered counsel. Ned considered. Alliance with Lannister remnant would show realm the lion tamed. Yet trust fragile. He agreed, but on conditions. Lannisters deliver annual grain surplus to northern orphanages. Gold used must build a school in the Westerlands for small folk girls. Tyrion laughed. Very well. Lions can learn scripture from wolves. Tyrion remained fortnight, exchanging wit with Catelyn, advising Arya on legal loopholes for fencing lessons with Brienne, writing letters to Sansa praising Ashai's sunsets. He left with handshake and promise of future wine. News flowed. Robb's embassy reached Old Town, where Archmesters pledged to copy Dragonfire formula for city beacons. Yunkai petitioned to join the charter under Dany's influence, and word arrived that Qyburn fled dungeons, vanishing with Tome of Necromantic Rites. A year trickled by in such tapestry. Labor, harvest, minor tremors of intrigue. Ned sometimes woke before dawn, gripping Ice's hilt, half expecting undead to breach walls again. Fear never quite left. It pressed like an old bruise. Yet each sunrise found more roofs mended, children learning scripts, ravens bearing mundane disputes, fence lines, water rights, Peace's dullness comforted. One crisp evening he rode through Godswood alone, leaves still red, sap thick. He knelt by the pond where reflections of heart tree wept crimson on dark water. Father! He turned. Arya stood under arching limb, grown taller, leaner, a shadow cat. She held a letter. From Sansa, she said, voice odd, excitement and trepidation. Ned opened. The Conclave of Ashen has agreed. They recognize the charter as binding on Shadowlands. In exchange, they ask for seat at next council and for right to teach eclipse lore to maesters. They fear the Weeping Moon prophecy, an eclipse they predict in 4 years. Bran says this may mark eruption of sea vents, shaking continents. They ask we prepare coastal refuges. Daenerys will return with them when monsoon winds shift. She sends love, and tells father to grow beard again. She misses the Northmen.
Ned Breed.
Preparations again. Another calamity glimpsed years ahead. Yet this time they had years, allies, dragons, and memory. He spoke to Arya. Tell the blacksmiths to design seawalls. Inform Jon. The realm must ready. She grinned ruefully. We just finished rebuilding roofs. Roofs can wait. Wave walls first. He smiled. Never dull, this crownless king. Arya sheathed her wooden training blade into belt. At least we have dragons. And charter, Ned added. And daughters who speak truth sharper than swords. They walked back toward castle lights. Moonless night, Ned sat at desk in solar, candle stub flickering. He penned letter to Daenerys. The north prepares. Rivers run clear again. Fields fat. Jon's heart remains yours. I grow beard as commanded, though Catelyn groans. Return when winds favor. Bring Conclave and all their fears. We shall meet them with Huthfire and reason. The world spins toward new shadows, but our hearts remember flames that banish dark. Until dawn breaks again. He sealed with wax. Direwolf pressed deep and leaned back. The candle sputtered, gutters darkening. Outside, wolves howled low content sound. Ravens settled on roof. The stars glittered in cold sweep, constellations bright. Ice wolf chasing dragon. New pattern astronomers named after the war's end. He thought of Lyanna, of Benjen, of Brandon, of Robert and Stannis, Tywin, Varys, of the boy King Joffrey now copying scrolls under Maester's stern eyes. The world changed. Ghosts lingered but did not chain.
Ned stood, stretched stiff muscles.
He let hand rest on pommel of ice. Peace forged from blood and mercy balanced. Through window he saw Jon atop battlements, gray cloak swirling, regal circling overhead like emerald halo. Jon raised hand in silent salute. Ned returned it. Tomorrow they would lay foundations of seawalls. Next spring perhaps treat with summer islanders to trade hardwood for ships. For years hence they would face eclipse and rising seas with dragons, wolves, roses, krakens, stags, foxes, and lions linked by charter stronger than swords. He doused candle, easing room into hush. Then he stepped out to join families' laughter drifting down corridors. sound bright, irrepressible, alive. The next morning dawned silver, fog crawling low across Winterfell's ramparts and wreathing the godswood in shifting veils. Eddard Stark rose before first light, pulled a thick wool tunic over weary shoulders, and slipped through quiet corridors. He carried no lantern. He had walked these halls since boyhood and knew every notch in the stone. Down a spiral stair, past the old armory now converted to a classroom for wildling children, and out across the damp yard where muted lanterns guttered in the pre-dawn chill. Inside the godswood the mist hung thicker, muffling the world to heartbeat and breath. Ned paused at the edge, inhaling petrichor and pine resin. The weirwood loomed in the haze, its white trunk wet with dew, red leaves fluttering like embers. Beneath its boughs Bran waited in a wicker chair fashioned with antler-shaped arms. A fur blanket lay folded in his lap, untouched though frost glittered on roots. Bran did not turn as Ned approached. His eyes, milk-pale from the sight, stared into an unseen distance. The ravens perched above him croaked softly, as though to one another. "Are your dreams uneasy?" Ned asked. "They are always uneasy," Bran murmured, "but pieces are settling. The river of time slows after every flood." Ned crouched, resting a careful hand on his son's shoulder. Bran felt fragile sometimes, flesh that carried too much memory. "Tell me what disturbs you." Bran's gaze drifted to Ned's face at last. Fire under the sea. It heaves, seeking cracks. Shadow priests feed it blood, hoping to birth a second dawn. But dawn can bleach the world as surely as night can freeze it. Ass high. Yes, Dany negotiates, yet they bargain in prophecy, not coin.
Ned sighed.
Words from the east grow darker each raven, yet she is wise. Bran's expression turned rueful. Wisdom fails against zeal that drinks from dream rivers older than gods. He lifted one shaking hand and opened his fingers. A pale moth settled on his palm, its wings dusted with frost. "We must weave our nets far wider, Father." "How?" "Seed forests with dragonglass. Teach every village the raven art so messages leap ahead of crisis. Bind lords by bread and road, not oath and sword."
Ned nodded.
"We've begun, but we will hasten." The moth flitted into fog. Bran's eyes lost focus again. Ned stayed until his son's breathing slowed, becoming calm. Then he left the godswood, mind already mapping new watchtowers along the coast. Within days stonemasons and surveyors departed Winterfell in every direction. Ned traveled first to White Harbor to inspect shipyards converting longboats into sturdy cutters able to outrun sudden squalls. Lord Wyman, leaner but no less jovial, greeted him on the wharf with a slab of smoked sturgeon and a sheaf of ledgers. "Grain flows south, timber flows north, and silver flows every which way," he declared. "We keep a tight ledger, else costs devour coffers before tide does." Ned spent 2 nights poring over accounts, ensuring wages reached shipwrights before noble pockets. In the great hall of Newcastle, he broke bread with fishermen who now served as pilots along the shivering sea, their stories of strange luminescent jellyfish near Eastwatch stirring unease. From White Harbor he rowed east along the stony coast, where ring forts rose on bluffs. Small folk here once trembled at the mention of Karstark levies. Now they welcomed Northman engineers who taught them how to pour lime-mixed concrete into molds for seawalls. Ned watched a crew of crofters lever massive timber pilings into freshly dug trenches, chanting timing songs older than Old Nan. He knelt and pressed a hand to the brine-soaked soil. It quivered faintly, as though the sea itself approved. At Torrance Square he met Sorrel Karstark, newly named Castellan after her father perished at Hardhome. She walked the battlements with him at dusk, blue scarf whipping. "We hunt deserter lords who still bow to old cruelty," she said, gaze on dark hills. "But the wildlings here farm happily. They teach our folk to compost fish bones." She smiled, unexpected flicker. They spoke until moonrise about law codices, crop rotation, and the price of fair justice. Before departing, Ned placed an iron-bound chest of silver stags into her care, earmarked to rebuild the ruined sept into a library. Weeks turned as Ned marched from holdfast to holdfast, weaving alliances through shared labor rather than banners. Letters arrived nightly, Jon reporting stable grain reserves after spring thaw, Sansa writing of black-glass towers rising in Asheye's outer harbor. "Stark towers," she joked, though they glisten like frozen smoke. Oberyn's scrawl followed, praising the local fermented rice liquor and detailing heated debates with the Ashen Conclave over eclipse cycles. Dany's letters were rarer but longer, poetic riffs on the sea of sighs, on shadowbinders who cut themselves to read tides, on Sekizares' scales reflecting starlight beneath purple skies. One message bore a distinct scent, warm cinnamon and smoldering incense. His parchment glowed faintly. Dany wrote, "The Conclave demands demonstration of our world's promise. They crave proof that chartered unity curbs the hunger of chaos. I have promised them symposia, healers from Dorne, builders from Karth, ravens from the Citadel, all convening at Winterfell come winter's first frost. They will judge then. Till that day hold hearths bright." Ned read it thrice, then summoned scribes to prepare invitations for the first great mending conclave of Westeros and Shadow. Midsummer, Jon arrived at Winterfell with Regal circling overhead and a dozen Night's Watch rangers at his back. The courtyard erupted in cheers, farmers, maids, smiths waving tools like pennants. Jon dismounted, mud spattering his cloak, and clasped Ned's forearm. "The wall stands 200 feet higher where we widened buttresses," he said, breath misting though air was warm. "Tormund's folk tend the berry fields south of Mole's Town. We are planting orchards, Jonagold apples. A sweet thing from a wild region," Ned mused. "Fitting." They spent the evening in the solar reviewing ledgers. Jon's eyes lingered on the map of Asshai pinned to the wall, its blank spaces menacing. "How soon will Dany sail back?" he asked. "Her last raven named Autumn Gales," Ned answered softly, "but sees obey neither raven nor king." Jon stared at flickering hearth. "Bran says the roots hum louder these nights. Something shifts. We will be ready." Ned poured ale into 2 cups. "Tell me of your rangers." Jon obliged, speaking of a young woman named Willow who tracked ice spiders, of a boy with a knack for singing wights to sleep. Voices lull the dead, apparently, long enough to burn them. Ned listened, marveled, and felt the slow grind of history turning new grooves. As leaves browned, freight barges laden with cut stone arrived from the Vale, gifts from Bronze Yon Royce. Dorne dispatched clay amphorae of medicinal salves. Storm's End sent cedar beams. The courtyards of Winterfell became a forest of scaffolding. Artisans erected the Conclave Hall, an octagonal chamber north of the Godswood, roof to be tiled in obsidian and pale weirwood planks. When moonlight struck test pieces, they shimmered like frozen dew. On full harvest night, Tyrion returned, this time accompanied by a cadre of dwarf stonemasons. He toured the hall, huffing at some joint angles, praising others. Over supper, he gave Ned an ingot of bright reddish metal. "Dawn steel," he said, eyes twinkling. "Smelted by Cohoric alchemists mixing Valyrian slag and comet ore. Very dear, very sharp." "What's its purpose?" Ned asked. "Symbolic. Forge it into a dagger. Gift for the one who binds shadow and sun." "And if that one wields it poorly?" Tyrion shrugged, smiling bittersweet. "Every gift may cut giver or receiver. That is the thrill." Autumn's first frost painted fields when a column of gray-clad riders appeared on the Kingsroad. At their head marched Lady Stoneheart, Catelyn's resurrected mirror, skin pale, scars rope red. Rumors had whispered of her vengeance fading, but here she came bearing a flag of truce. Ned met her beyond the walls with only Ser Brienne at his side. Stoneheart could not speak. Her throat carried no voice. Instead, she produced a scroll inscribed by Edmure, a plea for forgiveness and for healing. She had surrendered oath of vengeance, he wrote, after the wights of Hardhome reminded her that all flesh might soon share one grave. She sought now only to ensure her son's lineage thrived in safety. Ned studied the gaunt woman. Pain had carved hollows around her eyes. He offered her a water skin. She drank, water trickling from scarred throat. Then Ned knelt, and in gesture of absolution pressed his brow to her cold hand. Brienne wept. Stoneheart's shoulders shook. No sound emerged. She turned and rode away into dawn, leaving Ned with heavier heart yet clearer path. Even vengeance could yield. Winter's first snow arrived earlier than Maester's forecast, flurries drifting down as the conclave approached. Delegations arrived in colorful processions, ashen priests wearing dusk-gray masks, Dothraki scholars in embroidered vests, Carthene merchants bearing silk maps of ocean trenches. From Old Town came maesters laden with scrolls on eclipse prediction, bronze sextants gleaming. Greeted by Ned and Jon at the gates, they marveled at direwolves lounging near hearths and children reading under Ravenskull chandeliers. The night before formal sessions, Ned hosted a feast in the Great Hall. Tables groaned with roast venison, spiced chickpeas, sea-salted cod, and Dornish blood oranges. Jon sat near wildling chieftains. Arya argued knife grips with a Qohoric warrior poet. Bran spoke mind to mind with a child of the forest perched in the rafters. Laughter mingled with many languages: Valyrian, Rhoynar, Dothraki, Low Tongue. Music from iron-born drums blended with reach harps. As courses wound down, servants dimmed torches. Ned rose. Silence rippled. He spoke of the long night ended, of walls built from trust, and of the weeping moon the ashen warned. For years hence, he said, voice carrying through hush, earth and sky may tremble, but calamity need not claim us. We shall build breakwaters from Storm's End to the Jade Gates, store grain in mountain caverns, train every child to send ravens, to craft rope, to share water. No lord will hoard, no priest will hide. He looked around the hall at faces luminous in hearth glow. We are shards of shattered empires. Together we temper into a new blade, stronger for every alloy of blood and bone. Let us sign the Accord of Dawn. Scrolls bound in silver thread were unfurled. One by one, delegates pressed signet to wax or fingertip to ink. Beneath charter preamble expanded to encompass lands beyond 10,000 leagues. Last to sign was Bran. He wheeled forward, dipped a quill of weirwood into red sap, and traced runes of Old Tongue. In roots we trust. Thunder rumbled outside, as though the world acknowledged. Snowflakes drifted through high windows, twirling. Ned felt a weight lift. Another settled, hope's mantle heavy but warm. Dany returned at midwinter. Draco banners cresting horizon announced her arrival. Drogon's roar shook snow from rooftops. She alighted in the courtyard, Sansa and Oberyn beside her, bearing gifts. A crystal jar of black sand that glowed faintly, said to capture shards of fallen stars. A codex of tidal mathematics, and news that the weeping moon's shadow path had shifted north, sparing summer isles but darkening the narrow sea. Jon embraced her, breath clouding between them. Sansa hugged Arya, her southern tan stark against winter pale. Gendry tugged Oberyn into smithy to show Dawn steel prototypes. The Dornish prince emerged hours later brandishing a spear blade shimmering like sunrise. Bran smiled at Daenerys, who knelt and pressed her brow to his. That night Ned convened council by hearth. Dany unfurled Ashai's star charts, shimmering constellations painted in phosphorescent inks. A comet streak traced toward Westeros, overtaken by black aura. The conclave believes an arc of storms will follow the eclipse, she explained. Typhoons of superheated water spawned by vents near the smoking sea. They could push waves half a league high. Ned tapped the map. Our seawalls along the Mander must double height. King's Landing's new breakwater is half built. We can redirect Qohoric iron to the capital's cofferdams, Jon offered, and floodgates at the Blackwater Rush. Dany nodded. Ashai will ship volcanic glass to fuse into seawall seams. Makes them flexible. Arya leaned against a pillar. Flexible walls bend but don't break. Like my knees in dance.
Ned smirked.
A lesson for thrones as well. They plodded deep into night. Grain convoys, refugee routes, dragon patrols to shatter rogue waves with heat, experimental tide mills to drain floodwaters inland. When talk turned to leadership, Jon suggested staggering command, north, south, east each led by counselors rotating every moon. Governed by circuit, John said, tracing loops on parchment. No one person an axis. Danny concurred. Ned saw the wisdom. Power diffused cannot ossify. Fits prophecy's warning that single light blinds. Preparations accelerated. Hammer clang and saw rasp seldom ceased. Winterfell's forges glowed day and night, echoing across the snows. Tyrion directed rock eaters, golems animated by Karth alchemy, to carve tidal channels. Wildling women brewed pitch for torches that burned even in downpour. One evening, dwarfed stonemason Jirian summoned Ned to the conclave hall's rooftop. From scaffolding they gazed at horizon. Aurora flickered green, purple, then blood orange. Jirian's voice quavered. Atmospheric distortion. Means sun's corona shifting. Eclipse sooner than charts. How soon? Year early, maybe two. Ned's pulse thudded. A raven left perch, winging south. They redoubled work schedules. Conscripted additional labor from Vale and Riverlands. Quotas soared. Tempers frayed. Ned mediated quarrels over stone. And over spirits, when Dothraki horsemasters demanded open fields for practice, spooking fen spearmen. Compromise emerged in festivals of sport. Archery trials, horse races across iced fields, spear hurling at wicker giants shaped like wights. People found purpose in contest. Fears thawed beneath communal sweat. Amid frenzy, Ned carved slivers of solitude in the gods' wood, drawing strength from heart trees' patient rustle. Catelyn joined him often. They spoke little, hearts communing with rhythms beyond words. Sometimes Bran wheeled himself among roots, chanting soft syllables that coaxed sap to flow even in deep chill, tree bleed nourishing the soil. Spring again, third since Hardhome, broke with violent thaw. Ice jams burst on the white knife, flooding lowlands but sparing crops thanks to new levees. The seawalls, half complete, withstood first test when a gale hurled 20-foot waves against Mander Delta. Stones shuddered yet held. Ned sent casks of ale to builders. Cheers rang. In capital, Queen Marjorie hosted bread fairs along the Blackwater bank, distributing dark loaves baked with winterberry jam. Tyrion School for Girls opened doors. Small folk lined streets to watch first-class recite arithmetic in 3 tongues. Ravens from Lannisport heralded silver nickel veins discovered by dwarf miners. The charter's promise bore fruit, yet illusions of calm shattered one dawn when Raven from Storm's End arrived. Blood flecked on feathers. Its scroll. Qyburn commands a violin of corpses marching from Shipbreaker Bay. Thunder of broken drums. Local witnesses described undead stitched sinew to sinew, moving as one pulsing mass. Qyburn's necromancy refining whitecraft. Ned convened war council. Jon argued for Dragon Scorch. Dany feared wildfire near towns. Bran sensed Qyburn bound his creation with sigils keyed to motion. Break rhythm, army collapses. Arya proposed infiltration. Slip within column, cut anchor runes. Brienne volunteered. Gendry forged dawnsteel knives etched with weirwood runes. Ned insisted Arya and Brienne go together, disguised as fisherwomen. They sailed from White Harbor at dusk on a covert skiff. Ned watched them vanish, heart leaden, trusting their blades and wits. 3 nights later, horizon south flared green, wildfire igniting Qyburn's beast. Ravens followed. Arya and Brienne succeeded. They cut rune core, freed trapped souls. Wildfire caches exploded prematurely, consuming corpse mass. Qyburn escaped, last seen limping inland. Ned exhaled relief, yet dread sharpened. Each victory bred new nightmare. Year turned again. Eclipse rumors now filled taverns. Astronomers confirmed date, midsummer next. The Accord of Dawn mandated global vigil. At Winterfell, towers shone with obsidian lanterns. Dragons patrolled coastlines weekly, carving heat columns into waves. On eve of the eclipse, delegations gathered once more. Summer Islanders, ET scholars, even a shy envoy of ebony traders. Dany and Jon addressed throngs from Rampart. No matter shadow or sun, we hold torch for one another. Eclipse day dawned cloudless. Camps spread across Winterfell plain. People wearing smoked glass lenses, holding hands. As moon bit sun, daylight gauze dimmed. Shadows sharpened, air chilled. Wolves howled low. When totality struck, the corona blazed hairline silver around black disk. Weeping moon indeed. Gasps echoed. Hearts thudded. Ned stood on parapet beside Catelyn, Jon, Dany, Bran, Tyrion, Sansa, Arya. All faces upturned. Then tremor shook beneath their feet. Distant but distinct. A roar, oceanic, gargantuan, carried on wind. In northeast, horizon pulse glowed crimson. Bran's eyes rolled white. "It rises," he whispered. "Undersea furnace breaches." Ravens burst skyward. Ned turned. To watchposts. Dragon horns blew. Dragons launched, Drogon, regal, Sekizaries wheeling meteoric against weird twilight. Bells clanged in Winterfell. Townsfolk herded into high-ground dens. Along coasts, watchmen ignited beacons. Purple plumes signaling breakwater gates to lower. Hours later, waves slammed Storm's end walls, 50 feet high, but levees channeled surge into marshes. At King's Landing, the new breakwater shed first impact. Only warehouses nearest water flooded. Engineers cheered. Ned and Jon commanded from Winterfell's seamless glass observation turret. Reports arrived. Bravo's safe. Pentos piers battered but not lost. Carthus harbor flooded yet populace evacuated. Death toll far lower than feared. When sun returned, people knelt in mud, weeping relief. Ned closed eyes, breathed. They had bent to storm, not broken. Weeks passed healing damage. Seed grain from Highgarden replaced lost stores. Ironborn ferried lumber freely. Asshai dispatched sorcerers to quell aftershocks. Ned toured affected regions, hugged survivors, commended workers, burned pyres for lost. One dusk on King's Road, he halted at Quiet Field where daisies grew atop an ancient barrow. Here Brandon and Ricard had been honored by traveling stone carvers after the rebellion. Ned knelt, placed a single direwolf carved from dawn steel upon grassy mound. "I've done what I could," he murmured. "I learned Mercy's shadow. I wielded it." He felt cool wind brush sweat from brow, almost a response. He mounted again, riding toward rising sun. A village sprung beside the rebuilt Kings Road ferry. Children waved wooden dragon toys. Mothers baked bread in communal ovens. The realm lived. Years later, gray threaded Ned's beard thoroughly. Wrinkles etched crow's feet around eyes. In Council Hall of Winterfell he listened, quill poised, while a pair of fisherfolk debated water rights with a septa from the Vale. He mediated, scribbled verdict. Share catch, rotate nets, rebuild hatcheries. Simple, but he took equal care as in war councils. Outside, snow fell softly. He stepped onto rampart. Dragons slept curled around newly planted stone pine. Dire wolves dozed near gatehouse. Ravens preened on roof beams. Catelyn joined him, her hair dusted silver at temples. "King without throne," she teased. "Still at work." Ned slipped arm around her waist. "The work never ends, but it warms more than sword hilt." They watched children, wildling, Dornish, Myrish, sledding down Gentle Hill. Bells from Conclave Hall told midday. "Think we bought them peace?" Catelyn asked. "For a time," he said. "Enough to teach their children how to keep forging peace." She leaned head on his shoulder. "Then it's worth every scar." Ned gazed east where sun burst between clouds, lighting flutter of banners. Wolf entwined with dragon, rose twined with spear, kraken with candle. Beyond, in far heights, faint aurora glimmered though it was day, remnant of ancient lights. He breathed deep, tasting chill, soot, and budding sap. The north remembered, the realm endured. And the man who once believed honor alone could save the innocent now knew the truest honor lay in the endless, patient labor of peace. Sweat in spring, grain in summer, courage in autumn, vigilance in winter. Season upon season, holding the long night at bay. The midnight air in the solar tasted of quill ink and old ash. Ned Stark bent over a spread of fresh raven scrolls, the candle at his elbow guttering under a restless draft that smelled faintly of snowmelt. The tremors that followed the weeping moon had subsided, but his pulse still seemed to remember them, beating with a quiet urgency against the inside of his wrist. Outside the narrow windows, Winterfell slumbered beneath a dusting of new frost, the walls silvered by moonlight. A stable hand whistled somewhere in the darkness, soothing restless horses, and the sound drifted up the stone like a lullaby. Ned tightened the wool cloak around his shoulders and turned to the first letter. Maester Crick of White Harbor reported seawall progress at 3/4 height. Each course bound in the obsidian aggregate Tyrion had recommended. The second scroll from Lady Sorrel Karstark detailed rebel Ironborn now laboring under supervision to dredge channels for runoff in the rills. "They work hard for daily stew," she wrote in a steady, spare hand, "and curse you very little now." Ned smiled despite his fatigue. The third message bore a sigil unfamiliar to him, a lantern framed by twin jackals. He cracked the wax, half expectant of some ass-high cipher, but found instead a neat Wyan Carthene script. "Lord Stark, our astronomers confirm a second corona fragment lurking beyond the heavenly veil. It drifts pale and unseen save by the most delicate brass tubes. Some fear it is omen of twin shadow, but we believe it to be only a stone traveler. Still, we prepare tithes for your grain banks in case tides rise once more. May your wolves keep watch over both sky and earth." A thoughtful note, yet another weight on the ledger of vigilance. Ned stacked the letter with the others and pressed thumb to brow, massaging the ache that never quite left him. Behind him the hearth sulked low, coals ruby in the gloom. He rose, fed it a log, and watched sparks scurry upward like fireflies seeking spring. A soft rap interrupted him. Jon stepped in, cloak damp with night dew, Regal's green scale still glimmering at his collar. "Rangers arrived from Eastwatch," he said, voice pitched low so as not to wake the sleeping keep. "They bring news of strangely frozen bay. Steam vents along the shoreline have cracked again. But more worrying, they sighted ships, father. Black-hulled, sails cut to ribbons.
No colors flown.
Ned stiffened.
Iron-born. The Rangers think not. Stranger rigs. Some sails stitched from leather, others patched with woven reed. One prow carved in shape of Serpentman." Jon's expression tightened. Could be Shadowbinders testing new waters. Ned exhaled through his nose. So the Ashen still send feelers even after the accord. Jon leaned his shoulder to the mantle, eyes catching fireglow. "Dany's envoys say most of the conclave stands by their pact, but zealots on Ashai's inland rivers ignore their own counsel. There are whispers of a war priest calling herself the Smoke Weaver, gathering renegades from Carcosa and Thran." Ned's hand found Ice's pommel out of habit. The greatsword rested on wall hooks behind the desk. "A single priestess cannot field an armada. Yet she can send corsairs to prod for weakness," Jon countered. "Eastwatch's gates are stronger, but our coastal hamlets have no walls. A raid at Skagos or on Bear Island could feed her some twisted ritual." Ned set his jaw. "Will not grant her the meat." He crossed to the map cabinet, pulled the northern shore chart. "Send riders at first light to Bear Island and Skagos. Meege will raise their fleet. The Skagosi can muster their war canoes. We'll position Nyra Manderly's longships at Sea Dragon Point as pincer. Alert Asha Queen Yara to ready fast hulls at Pike. And bring Garland Reed. His marsh skimmers track shoals invisible to deep-keel vessels." Jon nodded, but hesitation clouded his eyes. "The council in 2 days, Sansa expects us. I'll keep the seat." Ned clasped his son's shoulder. "You command the coast." Jon drew breath as though to argue, then smiled, small and wry. "I'll make for Eastwatch by dawn, and if I find any priests clad in gray, I'll send them back south with ice in their boots." When Jon had gone, silence folded in, but Ned could almost feel the realm turning like a restless sleeper. Somewhere beneath these floors Catelyn slept lightly, as she always did when letters flew faster than ravens could rest. Arya, he knew, would be at Brienne's quarters sharpening new Dawnsteel practice blades. Bran in the tower, eyes adrift through dream roots, charting unknown ports of time. The realm was mended, perhaps, but scarred flesh could split anew along its seams. He rolled the maps, doused the candle, and willed himself to rest. Sleep, when it came, was thin as parchment. He dreamed of the sea. Green water churned into black. Frost smoked upon the waves. From the depths rose a shadow like an eel woven of night, eyes twin moons of weeping silver. It spoke in a voice that cracked stone. Honor shaped you. Mercy steadied you. Ruthlessness saved you. What will guide you when all lights fail, Ned Stark? Then the creature shattered into shards of obsidian that fell into the sea like mournful bells. Ned woke in gray dawn to clamor of bells of an earthly sort, bronze bells ringing from the conclave hall, summoning early council. He dressed quickly and strode into corridor traffic humming with delegates. Maesters in soft slippers, Dothraki scribes clutching wax tablets, summer islander physicians carrying satchels of herbs. He caught Bran wheeling past, guided by Mira Reed. The boy's face pinched with urgency. In the hall, Catelyn met him at the dais, worry furrowing her brow. "Shipwreck," she whispered. "Messenger just in from Dreadfort Coast. A vessel washed ashore, no crew, no cargo save cages of bones lashed to deck, painted with runes none could read. Some bones still warm despite sea chill." Her voice faltered. "They say the wood bled black sap when it cracked." Tyrion approached, cloak pockets rustling scrolls. "Lord Stark," he greeted. "I'd offer morning cheer, but—"
Ned sighed.
"Black-hulled, serpent prow?" Tyrion's eyebrows lifted. "Then we've two sightings." Oberyn Martell swaggered up, spear's haft slung across back. Perhaps the Smoke Weaver casts her first spell, or Qyburn has learned to float his puppets. Either way, we cannot wait for each wave to strike before we bail. He jabbed thumb to chest. "Give me a swift galley. I will sniff the source." Ned considered. "Take two." And a maester versed in shadow scripts. "Avoid direct battle until we know numbers." "Coward's plan," Oberyn teased, but his smile approved. "I go at dusk." Meetings that day blurred. Grain forecasts ahead of schedule. Seawalls 90%. New Raven nets finished. But every discourse pivoted to the serpent prows. Sansa, arrived the previous night, steered the hall with deft words. "Preparation outpaces fear," she repeated, coining a phrase that would seep through Winterfell and beyond. She convinced the Lithini ambassadors to lend smokeseers, arcane weavers who scented memory in charred wood. Gendry oversaw forging of sea steel grapples for shipboard skirmish. Arya practiced hooking them on moving cartwheels in the yard until her palms split. By dusk, Oberyn and his twin galleys slipped down the white knife, sun flames catching spear tip. Ned watched from the parapet, heart clamped. The Dornish prince turned only once to lift his spear in salute. Then sails swallowed him. Night settled thick. Ned found Catelyn alone in Bran's library, perusing Ashai texts. She closed the parchment, rose, encircled his waist. "This realm is not meant to know peace without test. But we will hold. We will," he murmured into her hair. "If we fall, children will stand taller." She pulled back, eyes shining. "You are thinner," she scolded. "Eat more." He laughed, allowed her to lead him to kitchens where steaming hare stew awaited. The next morning, Jon's Raven arrived from Eastwatch. Reached watch. Sea storm rising. No ships spotted yet. Marshal by midday. Ned penned quick reply, "Trust Skago's icebreakers. Hold your courage. And sent it north." He met with Tyrion atop the partly finished glass tower. Wind knifed. Tyrion balanced on parapet like a cat. "Had a thought," he said. "Runes on that wreck, if we can't read them, perhaps we answer in kind. Carthian cipher boxes stuffed with wildfire. Float them down current toward the next prow." He waggled brows. "Risk burns our own nets," Ned said. "We steer them on wind," Tyrion countered. "Send ravens ahead to warn every hamlet to keep offshore." Ned promised to consider. Tyrion hopped down, muttering equations. That night, Bran summoned council inside Godswood. The heart tree's face glistened crimson wet, sap tears forming in eyes. Bran's voice echoed deeper than child's throat. "Roots dream a silver door beneath the sea. Someone pries at hinges. If opened, the tide that flooded at eclipse will seem a trickle. A hush froze delegates. What can seal it? Ned asked. Light born where ice once ruled, Bran answered, eyes blank. Star flame anchored by living stone. He sank into chair, exhausted. Maester scurried. Next day Ned marched a small party north to the Vale of Then, where dawn-steel veins ran close to surface. Gendry accompanied, as did Tyrion and a clutch of then miners muscular as aurochs. They trekked through slush valleys, over ridges where cold wind combed the pines. Nights they camped to stargaze, mapping meteor currents. On third dawn they reached an outcropping glittering pale rose. The miners chiseled. Sparks leapt. Ned held a chunk up, metal shot through with crimson stripes. Star flame, Gendry whispered. They extracted all they could carry. Returning, Ned found Winterfell astir. Oberyn's raven perched in courtyard, scroll-tied. Tracked 3 serpent hulls off Skagos. Captured 1. Crew part human, part scarification, scales carved into flesh. Language dark. Interrogation reveals priestess forging Leviathan beneath smoking sea. Plans sketch a ship grown, not built, from whale bone and petrified coral. Will pursue. He added a jest. Wine poor, women colder. Ned allowed a brief smile. Days blurred. Metallurgists melted star flame or under dragon breath. Gendry forged first blade, edge shimmering bluish-white. They named it Dawnbreaker, meant for Bran to wield through mind of Secazaries. Tyrion's wildfire kites tested on Wolfwater Lake, streaking green across sky. Sansa drafted coastal drills for fisherfolk on evacuation horns. Arya sailed with Meej to drill harpoon crews. Catelyn oversaw hospices. Then Disaster's Whisper arrived. Jon's swift raven, riding slanted with haste, encountered Serpent Fleet. 10 hulls. They bypass Eastwatch in fog. Turning south. Believed heading White Harbor. Regal and I engage. Ned's chest tightened. He dispatched every rider. Raven, signal flare. White Harbor readied. Maester Crick rolled pitch casks to seawall catwalks. Manderley galleys bristled with sea-steel spurs. Grey narwhals carved figureheads. Waited. 2 days nothing. Third dawn red-streaked. Messenger horse collapsed in Winterfell yard. Rider choked by thirst. Ships sighted at Boar's Tooth Cove, he rasped. Regal wounded arrow storms of bone.
Ned armed.
He donned the reforged ice, now set with quartz veins of dawnsteel along Fuller, and mounted Icefang. Catelyn kissed him, tears unshed. Bran's raven landed on Saddle Horn. We ride woven of root and star. Ned touched the bird's head. Fly, he said. South he thundered, 20 direwolf riders galloping. Snow spattered like ashes. Crow screams overhead. They arrived by midday at ridge above Boar's Tooth. Below, sea churned red near shore. Wreckage littered surf. A serpent hull beached, ribs cracked. Fires sputtered green where wildfire kites hit. On cliff Manderley spearmen formed line. Jon stood at edge, cloak torn. Regal perched behind him, wing pierced by bone bolts long as spears. Ned dismounted, clasped Jon, scanning for threat. Of 10 serpent ships, 4 remained afloat offshore, black sails drooping. Decks swarmed gray-robed cultists, their skin carved into scale patterns. At prow of largest vessel stood a woman in robes of smoky glass, hair pale as moon, arms lifted to sky. Foam rose, swirling into spiral. Jon pointed sword. She chants. Sea obeys. Water bulged, rising into column. Bran!
Ned murmured.
A cry overhead.
Secazaris dove, Branastride, ice glowing.
Dawnbreaker glimmered in his grip. The dragon breathed starfire, white blaze scorching the spiral. Water hissed, column collapsed. Smoke Weaver shrieked, her voice carrying impossible distance. She raised carved rod. Green lightning arced. Secazaries swerved. Bolt grazed wing, but dragon steadied. Manderley catapults fired casks. Wildfire smacked hulls. Igniting corpses hung as charms along rails. Iron-borne skiffs harried from flank. Yara commanding with curse-rich glee. Arya steered Miej's flagship, Harpoon crews launching Dawnsteel lances. One struck Smoke Weaver's mast, sail sagged. Jon vaulted onto Regal, despite wound. He and Sekizares dived in tandem, twin jets of white-green flame crisscrossing decks. Cultists melted to ash. Bone bolt throwers burst. Smoke Weaver screamed, thrust rod at sea. Water stirred again, but Dawnbreaker flew. Bran hurled it, blade spinning like comet. It struck rod midshaft. Both exploded in shower of milky sparks. Smoke Weaver convulsed, robes shredding, form twisting into dark vapor sucked into churning sea. The remaining serpent ships faltered. Crews collapsed as if strings cut. Tides stilled. Cheer erupted along cliffs. Ned sagged with relief but raised fist in salute. Regal landed near spearline. Jon slid down, grimacing as healer rushed. Bran banked Sekizares, landing by Ned. His eyes cleared, he smiled faint. Door sealed again, he whispered. For now. Ned clasped his brother-son's hand. You grow older than me each day. Night fell as crews doused smoking wrecks, collecting survivors. Cultists dazed, muttering incoherence. Among charred beams Ned found Tyrion and Oberyn arriving in skiff, late but grinning. Missed the dance, Oberyn lamented. Tyrion shrugged. There will be encores. They burned enemy hulls, scattering ash into tide.
Ned watched Ember's drift.
Asha approached. Stormbreaker sails tomorrow, she said, nodding to charred sea. But I'll leave a dozen boats to escort merchants. This coast is ours too. It is everyone's, Ned answered. They clasped forearms. In dawn's pallid light, pyres crackled. Jon sat with Regal dressing wound. Dany's raven arrived. Ass-high stable. Conclave affirms peace. Returning with scholars. Ned sent reply, threat averted. We stand strong. He sealed with wolf-dragon wax. On ride home, armies sang. Wildlings crooning giants' lullabies. Northmen humming bear songs. Ironborn chanting salt dirges. Ned listened, thinking, music threads stronger than chains. At Winterfell gates, bells pealed triumph. Catelyn met him, eyes bright. Bran awaited, healthy. Sansa in library calibrating eclipse charts for next century. Arya practicing trick throws with harpoon hooks. Brienne cheering. Weeks later, when Dany dismounted Drogon in courtyard, Ned bowed deeper than protocol, because she brought not just dragons but scrolls of new Starforge craft, and treaties signed by 20 shadow priests renouncing blood rights. Feast followed, tapestries hung, torches blazing. At feast's height, Ned rose, cup in hand. Hall hushed. He spoke not of battles or storms, but of small things. A fisher child at Skagos teaching kitten to swim. Cedars sprouting along Blackwater levee where none grew before. A dwarf mason sculpting laughing gargoyles atop seawalls. These are victories, he declared. Not the sword, but the seed. Not the wall, but the window cut into it. Laughter and applause cascaded. Harps struck lively chords. Later, alone atop battlements, Ned gazed at night sky. Stars shimmered crisp. No aurora. Calm after trouble. He touched ice's hilt and found it cool, restful. Footsteps approached. Jon and Dany, cloaks entwined by breeze. Jon spoke, voice low. The Smoke Weaver's rod was carved from black coral. When Bran shattered it, water stilled. Perhaps power lies less in flame than in refusing its shape. Perhaps, Ned agreed. Dany looked eastward. Ashen Conclave asks we host them here next winter. They wish to see land unshadowed by doom. She smiled. I said Winterfell roof is wide enough.
Ned chuckled.
We'll lay more rushes. He studied them, their fingers laced. The realm passes to guardians patient and fierce. My watch nears its dusk. Jon shook head. Not yet, father. Soon enough. Ned's gaze swept gardens, smithies, distant seawall lamps. When Dawnsteel dulls, new smiths arise. He left them descending stairs. Corridor candles flickered. He heard Catelyn's soft humming in solar, reading ledgers, lips curved. Ned entered, closed door. They shared silence warm as hearth. He poured wine, handed her cup. Outside, wolves howled. A rising chorus drifting over roofs, answered by distant dragon rumble like an old god's purr. The realm was not healed final. No realm ever could be. But it was living, breathing, better than the sum of its wounds. Ned raised cup to lips and drank deep, tasting metal and berry, earth and frost, tasting hope, as enduring as the north itself. The fire pit in Winterfell's yard crackled with spruce and resinous pine, throwing a dancing halo of warmth into the frigid pre-dawn. Jon Snow crouched in its glow, rolling a fresh strip of bandage over the half-healed gouge that streaked Rhaegal's wing membrane. Soft green scales lifted and settled with each breath of the resting dragon, and the air smelled of singed kelp from the recent battle at Boar's Tooth Cove. Snow hissed down, slow, deliberate flakes that tried to hush the world, and hissed into steam on the dragon's heat. Eddard Stark stood a few paces away, gloved hands clasped behind his broad back. In the half-light the years seemed to peel off him. He looked once more the stern, watchful warden of the North who had ridden south all those seasons ago, before prisons and betrayals and crowns of ice. Now his eyes rested on Jon, son, king, ranger, and on the weirwood-bright sword Dawnbreaker lying across Jon's knees while he wrapped the dressing. The blade's pale surface caught sparks and glimmered. "You've mended wings since you were a boy?" Ned said, voice no louder than the pop of pitch sap in the flames. Jon tightened the bandage, tied it, and rose. "Foals and broken ravens," he answered, wiping resin from his fingers. "Dragons are heavier." He managed a smile and sheathed the sword. "He'll fly again by first thaw." "First thaw may come sooner than we expect," Ned said. "The rogue tides are calming, but currents shift faster every moon. Bran feels tremors in the roots, deep quakes under the shivering sea." He studied Rhaegal's slow, blinking eye, then looked at Jon. "We've won a reprieve, not an ending." Jon nodded, brushing snow from a pauldron. "I've sent orders north. Eastwatch crews will widen their sea barricades. Wildlings volunteered, said it's cheaper than fighting water later." Ned's breath clouded. "And south? Any word from Oberyn?" "A raven arrived an hour ago," Jon replied, drawing a folded parchment from his belt. The seal bore a laughing sun. They trailed the smoke weaver's surviving ship past Skagos, into weather so foul dragons refused. Oberyn claims it vanished beneath a bank of black thunder and never surfaced. He thinks the wreck drifted to us on purpose, part warning, part scouting. He's pursuing a rumor of a hidden lagoon in the shadow of Valyria's burning isle. Ned accepted the letter, scanned the breezy yet precise hand. "He takes joy in peril," he murmured, a fond exasperation. "Then, if he finds that lagoon, he'll need every trick the charter taught him." Jon cocked a brow. "Oberyn has tricks enough." But worry flickered behind the jest. "If Valyria's ghosts stir, we may need to reinforce the sea of size trade lanes. Yara's ships can't patrol everything. We'll raise it with council." Ned gestured to Rhaegal. "Fly messages south once the wing is ready. Dragons cover distance faster than ravens." Footsteps crunched on frozen gravel. Arya approached, cloak swirling, frost-flecked practice sword tucked beneath her arm. She nodded at them, eyes bright with mourning and mischief. "Bran's awake," she said. "Says the roots are humming louder in the east tonight." He sketched a map with new fault lines. She passed Jon a strip of jerky. "Mother wants us in hall for council in an hour. Gendry's got a fool plan to raise floating smithies along the coast." Jon laughed. "Trust him to hammer an anvil onto a ship." "It floats if you shape the hull like a cup," Arya insisted, grinning. Then she sobered, flicking a glance at Dawnbreaker. "Brienne says your form looked stiff yesterday. She'll spar you after council." Jon groaned. "She hits like a bull walrus, then block like a glacier," Arya said, turning on her heel with cat-like grace and vanishing toward the practice yard. Ned watched her go, a bittersweet warmth unfurling behind his ribs. "Yesterday she stole Tyrion's new telescope," he said. "Claims the stars looked lonely without proper company." Jon chuckled. He'll forgive her, once he invents another. They doused the fire, holstered supplies, and strode toward the castle's east wing, where the council hall's octagonal spire glimmered with sun-caught frost. Along the way builders were installing polished obsidian shingles, each tile etched with a house sigil intertwined with a winter rose, Daenerys's gift upon her return. The snow-dusted courtyard bustled despite the hour. Wildling lumberers dragged beams, maesters carried crates of ink, and a slender child of the forest perched on scaffolding humming a song older than men. Inside the hall, torches already flared. The great round table of weirwood gleamed under wrought iron chandeliers. Its surface showed a relief map of the whole known world, carved by master woodwrights and filled with mineral pigments. At the western edge, fresh streaks of pale pink indicated new seawalls. Black lines traced Oberyn's voyage, and red gold dots marked the locations of floating smithies sketched by Gendry. A fleet of forge barges he called fireflowers. Sansa, robed in thick slate blue velvet, greeted them from the high-back chair at Ned's left. Her hair, braided with small dawn steel rings, glinted copper in torchlight. Beside her, Catelyn spoke quietly with Maester Luwin and a plump septa from the Summer Isles. Across the table sat Tyrion Lannister, swinging short legs like a boy, quill poised over parchment. Gendry hunched near a pile of scale models, tiny wooden galleys crowned with smokestacks. Prince Oberyn's seat lay vacant, but his spyglass rested in front of it, a silent promise of return. Ned took his place. Jon settled at Daenerys's empty chair. She had flown Drogon to the Dreadfort the previous day, negotiating ship tar consignments. Bran's wicker seat rolled in on silenced wheels, Mira guiding it. His white gaze flickered around, took in the map, then focused somewhere far beyond walls. Two ravens settled on the back of his chair. One croaked a greeting. Sansa opened proceedings, voice calm. We have 4 matters. First, relief efforts in Gulltown and Myr. Second, Gendry's Seaforge proposal. Third, Bran's new fault line report. Fourth, the Open Door Festival petition. She set quill to notes. Lord Master of Ships, your seawall update? Maester Crick rose, pushing a pair of spectacles up long nose. He reported labor counts, stone shipments, and a small riot in salt pans over wage delays. Resolved when the local septon opened granaries with Sansa's writ. Ned listened, adding mental tallies. Then came Gendry's pitch. He placed a model on the table, a flat-bottom barge with retractable bellows housings and windsock chimneys. Fireflowers, he explained, tapping. Bottom hull forged with Niello alloy to dissipate heat. We drop anchor near project sites, smelt dawn steel scrap and obsidian fill, pour into molds right on water. No road haul, no frost delays. Tyrion studied the model. Cost. Half of fixed forges if we build 5, Gendry replied. Fuel from coal brick barges. We can chain them, float along seawalls as needed. Jon traced hull lines. What of storms? Hydraulic ballast chambers, Gendry said. Bran's idea. They fill with water, lower center of mass. All eyes turned to Bran. He nodded faintly. Roots told me how willows drink floods. That was explanation enough. Ned exchanged a glance with Catelyn. She tilted her head. Approval. We'll approve the pilot, Ned said. Forge 1. Test by spring tides. The council agreed. Next, Bran's report. He unfurled a parchment of spidery lines radiating through the shivering sea. Fractures spread from Valyrian rift, he murmured, fingertip gliding. They grow like branches. If they reach the ice trench north of Hardhome, the cold bedrock may shatter. Tidal surges follow. Tyrion whistled. How long? A year, or 10. Roots cannot see certain. Bran's eyes clouded. But Smoke Weaver's death slowed it. Her chant pumped heat into cracks. Now they creep slower. Then Oberyn's search matters, Jon said. We must know if other rogue priests remain. Agreed, Ned echoed. He turned to Sansa. Send a letter to the Conclave's most cautious seats. Ask them to recall any wanderers. Sansa scribbled. 4th item, Open Door Festival. A A small folk delegation proposed an annual holiday across kingdoms. Markets without tariffs, free healing tents, lantern flotillas in memory of the dead. Ned liked the thought. Catelyn smiled softly. They set midsummer as date, at river crossing near Trident, rotating yearly. As council closed, Tyrion cleared throat. Personal request. The Lowtown of King's Landing wants permission to print leaflets teaching wildfire safety. They require funding. Granted, Ned said, but ensure disclaimers. Do not try this at home. Laughter rippled. Evening came on with a hush. The hall emptied. Ned lingered by the map, tracing Oberyn's last path. He felt the old pull of roads, of warhorses snorting cold air. Yet duty chained him to hearth now, not by weakness but by choice. He straightened as the raven on Bran's chair fluttered to his elbow, cawed softly. "Storm," Ned asked it. The bird cocked head, then hopped onto map at the ice trench and pecked once. Ned tucked the omen away. He retired to his solar where Catelyn waited, nursing tea of lemon and honey. They shared silence. Outside, the stars burned steady. No aurora writhed. He realized the hush in his bones was not foreboding but space. Space where fear once lodged. He kissed her knuckles. Morning of the third day brought a sudden clatter of hooves. A black wind outrider galloped through Winterfell's gate, cloak lashing. The rider, face soot-smudged, tore off helm. Princess Nyra Manderly's daughter, Mirren. "Fleet on horizon," she panted. "Iron teeth banners. And a white standard, Oberyn's son." Relief and alarm mingled.
Ned mustard gars.
The fleet sailed upriver by dusk. 3 snake-prowed warships escorting a captured serpent hull locked between them with iron booms. Oberyn stood on its deck, grinning, spear planted. With him, a prisoner hooded in ash gray, wrists chained in dawn-steel cuffs, a ragged priest muttering in a sibilant tongue. On shore, council reassembled. Oberyn bowed flamboyantly. "Smoke Weaver's lieutenant," he declared, yanking hood. A gaunt woman glared, eyes black as tar. "She commands fewer now." They interrogated the priestess under watch of maesters and Bran's steady stare. She spat curses, but Bran slipped into mind, coaxing images. A half-sunken temple of dusk glass, whales impaled on coral towers, men chanting to deep light. Yet he found no legion awaiting. "She is last cult spark," Bran said, trembling. Star flames snuffed their altars. Cracks still peril, but no chant to widen.
Ned exhaled.
They imprisoned her beneath Winterfell's ice cells, guarded by silent sisters. Oberyn presented salvage. Sealed casket of shards, broken coral staff, runes still faintly glowing. Gendry stored it in vault lined with weirwood. That night, feast lit the hall again. This time subdued, sober victory. Jon danced awkwardly with Sansa. Bran played flute through a borrowed reed, the sound haunting yet hopeful. Arya challenged Oberyn to dagger throw. Tied him. Tyrion juggled 3 glowing river orbs. Children shrieked delight. Ned slipped out early, wandering to Godswood. Snow thickened air. The heart tree whispered leaves despite winter. He knelt. "Is it finished?" he asked the quiet. The face wept sap. Breeze stirred. He imagined an answer. Nothing ends. Rings widen. But he felt also assurance, roots deep, branches high. Footsteps padded. Jon sat beside him. For long while they watched snow fall onto dark water. "Father," Jon said at last, "when Bran sealed that door, I felt a silence in my mind, like a storm passing." "I felt it," Ned said. Jon ran thumb over frosty grass. "Do we still need kings and queens? Or can we step aside?" Ned studied snowflakes swirling. "A day will come, but not today. Children still reach for hands to guide across ice." He smiled. "Guide them well, then set them free." They rose, walking back toward lamplight casting gold on falling snow. Behind them the heart tree watched, sap eyes bright. Above them dragons circled in slow, lazy loops, guardians who, for this breath of time, had no fires to fight. Winterfell's stone absorbed their wing beats like the steady pulse of a realm that had chosen to live, through terror, tempest, and tender dawn. And in Ned's heart, under scars old and new, lay a quiet field sown with simple seeds. Hearth smoke, children's laughter, the susurrus of leaves. He would tend that field while breath remained, and trust those who came after to sow the seasons he would never see. The courtyard tasted of iron and sleet. Jon Snow rode out through the Hunter's Gate as the dawn bell tolled once, twice. Long mournful strikes that never truly left the stone. 30 Night's Watch outriders fanned behind him in quiet wedges. Their black cloaks overdyed a dusky wolf gray to mark service to the charter as much as to the wall. Regal paced overhead, one slow circle, a streak of Viridian F. Ire against low clouds, before banking southeast toward the White Knife to scout ahead. Jon scarcely felt the cold these days. Winter had become a second skin. At his right flank rode Ser Jorah Castle's daughter Winifred, the trident of House Manderly painted bright on her shield. To Jon she murmured, "Greywater Watch says the marsh ice is thinning. We'll cut half a day if we risk the neck trail." Jon's answer came in a puff of fog. "Risk it." They pressed on. 2 leagues north of White Harbor the sky cracked with the brazen roar of bronze horns. Crews along the seawall paused, hammers half lifted, as 3 floating smithies, Gendry's fireflowers, rounded the river bend in stately procession. Their hulls were blackened cup shapes, low in the water, smokestacks belching pale steam rather than coal soot. Alchemists had perfected a sea coal slurry that burned hot but clean. 100 feet beyond, on a scaffolding encrusted with rime, Gendry Waters himself signaled with a red lantern. Anchor 20 fathoms. Chains rattled. The forge barges slowed, ballasted chambers drinking river so they sank until their steel skirts kissed the current. Within minutes sparks leapt skyward, dawn steel molds glowing peach and then cherry. On the nearest barge, a Myrish glassblower spun molten obsidian into capillary rods to strengthen breakwater seams. Watching from the quay, Sansa Stark pulled her hood snug. Wind teased her copper hair free, flicking ringlets across parchment she held. The latest grain shortfall projections from salt pans. A seagull landed upon a bollard and eyed her quill, hopeful. "Not for you," she told it, smoothing the page as she calculated tonnages. The gull cocked its head. A second later it took wing as a shout echoed from the ramp. Riders, Night's Watch colors, galloping from the New King's Road. Jon lifted visor before the guards had time to challenge. Sansa felt her sigh before she realized she'd been holding her breath. She descended wooden steps 2 at a time just as his horse slithered to a halt, hooves skidding on torch-wet boards. "Storm," she said. "2 galleys under tattered colors off Breaker's Finger," Jon replied without greeting.
No sals. Bare mest slike bones.
He swung down, boots clanging. "Thought we'd better see if your floating furnaces are as fleet as their maker claims." Gendry, already crossing by plank, snorted. "They'll outrun a seasick kraken. But if your bone ship's close first, best pour iron fast." He eyed Winifred's mud-spattered greaves. "Good ride." "Wet," she answered. Sansa broke in. "We need proof of intention, not fear. Bring 1 vessel into the estuary untouched if you can." She shoved a second parchment at Jon, a printed broadside draft. Open Door Festival blazed in charcoal-pressed letters, flanked by stylized dragon and direwolf entwined. "We scatter these from Maidenpool to the Arbor next fortnight. If a fleet appears hostile and disappears, rumors will outshout festivals." Jon scanned the broadside. Beneath the title, "Lanterns for the Lost, Bread for the Stranger, Songs for All Tongues." He gave a faint nod. "All right, we'll try diplomacy first." "Bring them to the Fireflowers," Gendry added. "I'll show them steel they've never dreamt." A harbor bell tolled high 3 quick chimes. Gendry's smiths hustled to ropes. Jon mounted again. "I'll mirror flash when we reach coves. If lanterns wink thrice, recall Regal. Twice means parley. If flame turns black, we loose Dawnbreaker," finished Sansa, her voice steady though her fingers whitened on parchment. Jon's gray eyes warmed. Then he wheeled and galloped away, retinue splashing behind. Night cloaked the Boar's Tooth coastline in a smear of ink. On a ridge of slick grass Ned Stark stood with Arya and Ser Brienne. Below, starlight silvered wreckage from the Serpent Fleet's previous defeat. Twisted beams protruding like rib bones from tidal pools. Fragments of coral-ruined planks glowed faintly. They were here to bury those shards deep, per Bran's warning. Inside stone coffers lined with dawn steel mesh so no lingering spell echo could whisper to the sea. Troops formed a silent chain, passing crates from wagons to a crevasse mouth. Each crate thudded into darkness. Dwarf stonemasons followed, sealing cavities with quicklime and sand that hardened to glass in minutes. Arya supervised the chain, quick eyes spotting any careless grip. Ned, leaning upon ice, mused at how far his daughter had come since Pinecone Wars. Every once in a while she tossed him a wry grin, as if she felt the same echo. Brienne returned from perimeter round, wiping rain from brow. "Clear," she reported. "Only gulls and ghosts." Ned gazed out at black tide. Ghosts enough. He remembered Brandon's laughter, Lyanna's song, Benjen's oath. A gust carried salt and decay. He squared shoulders. Load the last crate. An hour later the crevasse shone like a glass scar under moonlight, sealed. Brienne offered Ned a flask. He swigged strong berry wine. "One door closed," she said. "Doors always open," Arya murmured, sheathing a dagger. Her expression was not bleak, merely factual. Ned ruffled her hair, earning an eye roll. Back at camp, Bran awaited by a low fire. His raven perched on a driftwood post, feathers ruffled. Bran's trance voice drifted across embers. "The deep quiets tonight, father, and the western wind whispers none." Ned knelt beside him. "Then we ride for Winterfell before dawn." Bran's gaze slid to horizon. "The tree in my dreams budded 3 new leaves," he said softly. "One silver, one copper, one white as milk. When the wind tore them off they fluttered together, spinning like a coin." Brienne frowned. "Omen. Choice," Bran said. Ned squeezed Bran's shoulder. "Leaves fall when they must. Roots hold." Bran's lips curved. 2 days later White Harbor Bay boiled with eddies when the black-hulled strangers allowed themselves to be shepherded behind new seawalls under escort of fireflower barges. Jon rode Skull Figurehead to moorings, regal gliding sentinel overhead. The outsiders, whip-lean sailors clad in patch-leather skirts, cheeks tattooed with weeping fish, offered no salute except pressed palms. On the quay, Sansa, flanked by Maester Crick and Lady Sorrel, welcomed them. "Bread, salt, and safe harbor," she proclaimed. A hush lingered until the eldest foreigner, her eyes lidless like eelglass, accepted black bread dipped in salt brine. Ceremony sealed. Through interpreters they named themselves Drenni, survivors of an archipelago swallowed by the Frostdrift quake. They sought refuge, not war. Their sails had rotted on drift across half a world. Their ships porcupine bolts, ones that had pierced Regal's wing, were defense against unknown coasts. They offered lapis-carved cylinders, tidal flutes capable of reading undertow hum. Sansa traded them barrels of rye and charter papers, granting them unused tidal flats north of Wolf's Mouth to settle. At council the next day Ned eyed the map while Drenni envoy traced her journey with coral blue ink. Bran's raven croaked approval. Tyrion scribbled notes to commission flutes. Gendry, curious, tapped one cylinder. It sang a low minor chord that vibrated the weirwood between floorboards. "World grows smaller," said Catelyn, watching the envoy depart. "Or we grow larger," Ned replied. Late frost came swift that winter, sharpening mornings. Work did not slow. Fireflowers crawled seawall edges like embers on an anvil, pouring slag into gaps. In the gift, wildling orchards bore first crates of Jonagold apples. Children pressed them into golden cider while maesters recorded yields. Tyrion's wildfire pamphlets printed by the thousand. Small folk tacked them next to festival broadsides.
Open door Festival Dondbreit, Skies Cobalt.
At midpoint of the Trident, tents blossomed like a tapestry. Myrish glass pavilions, Tyrell rose marquees, reed hide lintos, lantern barges anchored mid-current, their bows carved with names of fallen towns. At sunset, Jon and Daenerys stood atop a dais hewn of dawn steel. Ned flanked them. They released First Lantern, etched with a direwolf and 3 dragon heads intertwined, and thousands followed, sliding across water like a galaxy. Songs rose in 20 languages. Gendry's floating forges, moored downstream, blasted 3 geysers of flame, white, green, gold, that spiraled skyward before fading into sparks. Children shrieked delight. Catelyn wept softly for those gone. Arya juggled lanterns with Oberyn on the riverbank until both tumbled laughing into mud. Deep night settled. Ned wandered among campfires, listening. Sailors teaching reed flute scales, Dothraki telling stories of the Bleeding Star, a maester translating Braavosi jokes for giggling fishergirls. He stopped at one small flame where a Drenni elder carved new runes into a cedar plank. She looked up, eyes glassy but kind, and offered him a sliver of driftwood etched with 3 lines. Tide flows to those who open gates, her interpreter murmured. Ned bowed. Spring melt turned roads to ribbon mud. Ned's knees ached from long rides, yet he made one more south through the neck to Greywater Watch, where Howland Reed greeted him on a floating dock. They shared eel stew, spoke of Lyanna beneath half-moon. Reed handed him a bundle, wolfskin wrapping a polished shard of obsidian, edges dulled by time. Came up in the last tremor, Reed said. Stone that once drank sun can drink shadow again. Ned thanked him, though he scarcely understood the stone's future. He returned to Winterfell, set it upon Bran's table. Bran smoothed fingers over Rugos' surface. A seed, he whispered. Years pivoted. Ghost grew grayer, jaw flecked with white. Regal scar healed into a thready silver line. Sansa's broadsides expanded into a monthly charter gazette distributed by Raven. Jon and Daenerys married at dawn beneath heart tree blossoms that Bran coaxed to bloom out of season. Vows spoke of ice, fire, and fields yet to reap. Tyrion became teacher of coin and letters, founding an academy in Kingsroad Fork. Arya sailed west once more, mapping edge currents with Drenni flutes, promising to return when the sea whispered a new tale. Oberyn eventually quit seafaring, opening a hospital in Sunspear that used obsidian needles to sew nerve wounds. One winter morning Ned woke to calm and realized a month had passed without an urgent raven. He and Catelyn breakfasted on spiced oats while snow dusted peach trees in courtyard. He escorted her to Godswood, left her busy among seedlings, and wandered to the parapet where views stretched across fields white with promise. Footsteps approached, Bran, wheeled by Mira. Bran's eyes shone clear. Roots are quiet, he said. Too quiet, Ned teased. Quiet like a sleeping babe. Bran studied horizon. Leaves will always fall, but we built windbreaks. Ned's throat tightened. He rested hand on Bran's shoulder. Mid-morning he climbed the tower stair, ice at his back, and found Jon atop battlements, scanning skies. A scrap of paper fluttered in Jon's hand, Arya's newest report, perhaps. Ned joined him. Southward, smoke curled from the fireflowers by distant seawall. Westward, dragons wheeled lazy arcs. Eastward, the sunrise painted clouds saffron. Another door may open, Jon said after a time, eyes on east. When it does, Ned answered, you'll choose which leaf to drop. Jon's mouth softened. And you? I'll be here, tending roots, or laughing with grandchildren who think dragon tales are bedtime myths. Ned chuckled at the thought. I chose that life when I swore to keep this realm breathing. Jon tucked Arya's letter away. They stood until sun cleared cloud edge. Below, smithies clanged. Somewhere a child squealed at first sled ride. Wolves chorused, answered by distant dragon call. Sound rolling over land like thunder made of home. And Eddard Stark, who had walked from honor to vengeance to mercy, leaned upon the stone and exhaled slowly. In the steam of his breath he saw the promise Bran named. Not the endless night, but seasons circling with heartbreak and harvest alike. A wheel that men and women, wolves and dragons, together would keep turning. He closed his eyes a moment, tasting snowflake on his tongue, hearing laughter sail up from courtyards, and thought, yes, let the leaves fall.